Chapter 560. Go together. Gadotsi was puzzled. Yes. Romo nodded and then looked at Wuming. Thanks to my friend, I can now reunite with Sito. I'm really grateful to you, my friend. Romo looked at Wuming gratefully. Thank you, Master Cylinder. Sito did the same. He looked at Wuming with a grateful expression. But it seems that it's because of the effect of the Holy Grail that I and Sito can be together. The Holy Grail doesn't belong to me and Sito, and if I and Sito are separated again, I'm afraid we won't have the chance to get along like this. So, I and Sito are considering whether we can go together. It was not easy for a couple to be summoned together, not to mention that both of them still had the curse on them even after they became heroic spirits. After all, this was the curse that had troubled Romo and Sito for a long time. Only a miracle like the Holy Grail could make this curse disappear temporarily. In this way, Gadotsi, who accepted Romo and Sito's proposal, could not only bring the Holy Grail back to Chaldea, but also let Sito and Romo continue to reunite, and also increase the strength of Chaldea's servants. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone, why wouldn't he do it? Gadotsi and Matthew looked at each other, and then looked at Olga Marie. Well, if we use a special method to mark Romo and Sito, and then use the method of summoning servants, it's not impossible to summon the 2 of you from this singularity. Olga Marie pondered as she began to mark the spirit bases of Rama and Sito. You 2, stand over here. Then, while Romo and Sito were accepting the spiritual base mark, Gadotsi and Matthew looked at Wuming again. I'm the one who prepared the Holy Grail for you. You can do whatever you want with it. Wuming said with a smile. Besides, Olga has begun to mark Rama and Sito's spiritual base. She is going to send them to Chaldea. Why are you still asking me? Wuming joked. Hearing Wuming's words, Gadotsi and Matthew both laughed. After all, Assassin helped us get the Holy Grail, so we have to ask. You little guy. Wuming smiled helplessly and touched Gadotsi and Matthew's little head, messing up their hair. Why am I touched? Matthew said weakly. At this time, Olga Marie suddenly spoke. It's done. As expected, marking a servant's spiritual base is nothing to me. Olga Marie proudly said, raising her neck like a white swan. Yes, Olga is the best. Wuming smiled as if he was praising a child. Although it was not easy to mark a servant with the Holy Grail in their body, it was not difficult. It could be said that if it was Roman, he could also do something like marking a servant who took the initiative to accept the mark. All in all, as long as Tachika comes back, immediately summon Romo and Sito, then they can be brought to Chaldea. Then, Gadotsi looked at Romo and Sito. Then, welcome in advance, Mr. Romo, Miss Sito. Romo and Sito also looked at each other and smiled. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master. At this time, Wuming quietly came to the side of Olga Marie's projection and asked. Is there any problem? Let the servants go to Chaldea. Of course, there is no problem. Chaldea has a lot of servants who accepted Tachika's summon. Olga Marie said that there was no problem at all. This made Wuming stunned. When he went to Chaldea, he didn't see any other servants. As if she saw Wuming's thoughts, Olga Marie smiled helplessly. I heard from Romani that you only stayed in the control room for a short while. Did you go out and see? Chaldea prepared a lot of servants' rooms, and there were a lot of servants living there. Wuming smiled awkwardly. Indeed, although he went to Chaldea, he only stayed for a short time, and he only stayed in the control room for a short while. At this time, Roman's voice came. Reiki transfer is ready, Tachika, Matthew, get ready. Everyone immediately made way for several people who were preparing for Reiki transfer. And this. Wu Ming picked up the Holy Grail that was still on the unconscious Roman blonde girl next to him. Anyway, it would disappear later, so it didn't matter. With a gentle toss, Wu Ming threw the Roman Holy Grail into Gadotzi's hand. Then, a lot of magic appeared around Gadotzi, Matthew, and Pamilia, who was still sleeping. That was the precursor of Reiki transfer. Then, Wu Ming threw the Sword of Salvation in his hand, and the Sword of Salvation was directly attached to the ordinary knight's sword on Matthew's waist. The armor may disappear after returning to Chaldea, but this Holy Grail made of Holy Grail will not disappear. You can use it, or use it as a relic to summon me. In short, you can use it as much as you want. Gadotzi touched the armor on her body, Matthew touched the sword on his waist, and nodded at Wu Ming. Then, Gadotzi and others turned into light and disappeared. As soon as Gadotzi and others left, Achilles and Karen's body began to glow. I'm running out of magic. Sharon touched the back of his head in embarrassment. I'll take my leave first. With that, Sharon turned into magic and disappeared. Looks like I'll have to disappear early, just like my teacher. Then, whether it's Sodric or Celander, let's have a good fight next time. No problem, let's have a good fight next time, Achilles. Wu Ming smiled at Achilles. Then, Achilles disappeared as well. Then, the unconscious Roman blonde girl who had lost the protection of the Holy Grail also turned into light and disappeared after Achilles disappeared. At the same time, rays of magic light rose from other parts of the continent, which was a sign that the followers had left. Perhaps, only Attila and Wu Ming were left in this singularity. At this moment, the entire singularity began to shake violently. This was the sign that the singularity that had lost the Holy Grail was beginning to be repaired by the power of historical correction. Why, don't you want to say goodbye, my friend? Wu Ming smiled at Attila. There's no need. Attila said coldly. But the silence at the beginning meant that Attila's heart was not cold. That's true. It won't be long before I release you. This is the promise I made to you as your first friend. Attila looked at Wu Ming and did not speak. Wu Ming did not speak to Attila again. The two quietly watched the singularity begin to be repaired and waited for their departure. Then, Attila's body began to glow. Then I'll wait. Wu Ming looked around, but there was no one around. Wu Ming stretched. Then, it's time to find the fake Magic King. Chapter 561. In the source of chaos, traces of light came from the center of the chaos. It was strange. It was chaos, but there was a center, which gave off a rather contradictory feeling. In the center of the light, a giant dragon was sleeping on the platform formed in the center. The light was emitted from the giant dragon's body. Beside the giant dragon, there was a smaller dragon with 4 pairs of horns on its head. Interestingly, apart from the size and number of horns, the smaller dragon was exactly the same as the giant dragon. The little dragon was casually walking around the giant dragon, but it never left the giant dragon's surroundings. It just kept walking like this. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the eyes of the smaller dragon did not have any consciousness. Although it was walking freely, it gave off the feeling of a puppet. After an unknown period of time, the smaller dragon was still walking around, but the giant dragon woke up from its deep sleep. Wu Ming slowly opened his eyes, and an unknown aura spread in all directions as Wu Ming opened his eyes. It was the coercion that belonged to the origin dragon. If there were fantasy breeds around at this moment, they would be immediately suppressed by Wu Ming's coercion. After sensing the natural release of power, Wu Ming shook his head slightly. I lost my dragon's coercion, but I gained a higher level of coercion. Wu Ming slowly propped up his body and opened his huge dragon mouth. Roar, a roar that was different from a dragon's but louder than a dragon's echoed throughout the entire source. Then, as though a bright lamp had been placed in the chaos, the entire source was instantly covered by the light emitted from Wu Ming's body. "Master, are you awake?" At that moment, a voice came from the top of the smaller dragon's head. At that moment, the smaller dragon's body was no longer moving. Instead, it stopped steadily beside Wu Ming like a standby machine. "Collis, it's been hard on you." Wu Ming supported his upper body and stretched. His huge dragon head looked at the small dragon that looked exactly the same as him. To be precise, he was looking at the top of the smaller dragon's head. "There's no such thing, Master. Although a lot of time may have passed on your side, only a short while has passed on Collis's side." While speaking, the smaller dragon's pair of dragon horns suddenly detached from its head. Then, the dragon horns grew larger and merged with Wu Ming's head, turning him into a giant dragon with 4 horns. "Oh. Could it be that you've used my body to adjust the time of the root of everything?" The crimson eyes were filled with surprise. Wu Ming had no choice but to create this small dragon because Wu Ming's main body had to guard this place to prevent a sneak attack. If Wu Ming wanted to go out, he had to use this backup body. However, this backup body was created by Wu Ming using his own flesh and blood, as well as other materials, as well as origin energy. In that case, it was not strange that this body had Wu Ming's main body's abilities. However, Wu Ming had never done much research on this body, so it was only used as a backup body when Wu Ming went out. But now, it seemed that this backup body's abilities had been developed by Collis. She could actually adjust the time difference between the outside world and the source. "Master, please punish me," Collis said in a low voice. Wu Ming naturally knew what Collis was referring to. She had developed his backup body without his permission. Like a paranoid person, he would definitely suspect that Collis was trying to replace Wu Ming. After all, apart from combat strength and adaptability to time and space, Wu Ming's backup body was no different from Wu Ming's main body. In other words, it was not impossible for Collis to use Wu Ming's backup body to betray Wu Ming. However, Wu Ming did not think so. Putting aside the fact that Collis was destined to be unable to rebel against him, Wu Ming believed that Collis would not betray him. Time had proven that the bond between Wu Ming and Collis was unbreakable. Although Collis was a magic costume, Wu Ming did not treat her as a magic costume. Instead, he treated her as a friend, partner, or subordinate. In short, she was someone he could trust. "Why would I punish you, Collis? I can't thank you enough." Wu Ming shook his head. "Xiao An is stubborn. If I don't take the initiative to talk to her, she will treat herself as a weapon. As for you, you often take the initiative to talk to me. You even protect me when I use my servant's body to go out. Why would I punish someone like you?" Wu Ming extended his dragon claw and touched Collis. "You're too kind, Master. This is what I should do," Dragonhorn said softly. However, he felt that Collis was enjoying it. After hearing Wu Ming's words, the chain seemed to be dissatisfied with Wu Ming's words. It resisted slightly and gently knocked on Wu Ming's body. However, to Wu Ming, it was simply acting coquettishly. After comforting Enkidu, Wu Ming continued. "Besides, you helped me develop this body's ability. I can't be happier. Why would I punish you? If this body could be like Wu Ming, then it could replace Wu Ming to guard the house, and Wu Ming's body could go out. Who doesn't want to use their original body? Who wants to use a fake body every day? Then, the next time I go out with my original body, Collis will come with me," Wu Ming suddenly said. "Thank you, Master." Although Collis was a magic costume, she also had her own thoughts. She could see that Wu Ming wanted to make up for the loneliness in her heart. "After all, you are not my slave. Don't talk about letting you stay here every day. If it were me, I would be bored to death." Wu Ming's dragon face showed a helpless expression. Wu Ming believed that Collis was too lonely. That was why she worked so hard to develop this body, which diverged the time between the origin and the outside world. This way, she would be able to see Wuming soon and wouldn't have to wait for a long time. Although Wuming didn't think it would be a long time. After all, Wuming only spent a few days or so to go out of the singularity with the body of a servant. However, for Collis, even if she didn't see Wuming for a day, she would still be lonely. She was a sentient tool that was determined to have a master when she was just born. After she gained the master's favor and decided to serve the master forever, she realized that the master would leave her side every few days. Even if she had a lot of knowledge and experience, after losing the master that she could rely on, Collis, who was actually less than a year old, couldn't accept it. Even if it was just for a short period of time. With that thought in mind, Collis successfully controlled Wuming's spare body and developed the ability to control the internal of the origin. Simply put, it turned from an ordinary robot in the lab into a central controller. Then, let me test the performance of this body. Saying so, Wuming put his claws on the spare body that was smaller than his original body. In an instant, the spare body's eyes emitted a bright light, making people feel as if they had been turned on. Chapter 562. Two dragons, one large and one small, stood on the platform inside the origin. The small dragon was moving about while the large dragon stood silently on the platform. Wuming's consciousness was still in his main body. The small dragon could move about because it was under Wuming's control. After all, the small dragon could be considered as Wuming's clone. With his spirit power rapidly developing, Wuming could already separate a sliver of consciousness from his main body and enter this body. Roar! The small dragon let out a furious roar. In an instant, the primal chaos around him rippled, and several transparent spheres appeared. On each ball, there were constantly changing images. These spheres represented every world that Wuming had been to. The small dragon pointed with its finger. One of the spheres floated over and arrived before the large dragon. Upon closer inspection, the image on the sphere was of some elementary school students in class. Has Mayu already started school? She should be in the 6th grade now. Has it been so long? Wuming sighed. I clearly said that I would return soon. I can only say that I didn't expect the enemy to be so difficult to deal with. Wuming looked at Mayu, who was listening attentively in class with nostalgia. Ripples appeared in his eyes as if he was reminiscing about his past experiences with Mayu. Coming back to his senses, Wuming looked to the side. He saw the sleeping Ilya and Chloe, who was trying to tease Ilya. These two little fellows. Wuming shook his head with a smile. Fortunately, I have the means to control the passage of time. I was afraid that Mayu would have become adults by the time I returned. As Wuming spoke, the small dragon pointed with its finger again. The sphere that represented Mayu's world fluctuated slightly. This way, the passage of time in Mayu's world will be extremely slow compared to other worlds. This way, Wuming would be able to return before Mayu's 6th grade winter break and fulfill his promise with Mayu. Then, Wuming controlled the small giant dragon to bring the balls of the other worlds that Wuming had been to before to Wuming. Wuming looked at the world of the god slayers, paying attention to the daily lives of his god of disobedience's minions and his beautiful female knights, and then felt a little helpless. As expected, the gods of disobedience are indeed the gods of disobedience. They seem to have settled down, but they still caused a lot of trouble, and Wuming switched to an image on the ball. The person on it was Wuming's authoritative spirit bead, Neza. Basically, it's this guy who leads them, Wuming said with a gloomy expression. In the world of the god slayer, Neza, who was about to go to Italy to steal the sword of the King of Swords, Salvatore Toni, suddenly felt a chill on his back. After looking around cautiously, Neza decided not to go in. Wuming smiled helplessly, shook his head, and then looked at the other worlds. In the big underground tomb of Nizalik, Demiurgos and Yair Bade were discussing something. It seemed that they had listened to Wu Ming's words and did not go out for the time being. They were trying to hide in the big tomb as much as possible. Although I don't care much about good or evil, I still can't help but worry about these guys with -500 justice points. Wu Ming said helplessly. Let's just pause the time of this world. After all, it could be shut down later. There was no difference. With that thought in mind, Wu Ming controlled the small giant dragon to tap lightly on the ball that represented this world. In just an instant, the ball seemed to be frozen with a layer of ice. The people in the ball, or rather, the world, were completely frozen. It was not an ordinary freeze, but a freeze that interfered with time and space. Therefore, the people in that world did not notice it. Let's just do the same to the other worlds. Wu Ming smiled irresponsibly. Although it was indeed very convenient, it was almost useless in the world where the Magic King was. The reason Wu Ming could affect Mao's world was because Wu Ming had protected that world before he left. Now, the world where the fake Magic King was in was no longer under Wu Ming's control. The fake Magic King who had grasped part of the power of Source was not to be trifled with. If not for the fact that the fake Magic King could not reach the major source, he would have probably replaced Wu Ming long ago. At that time, the fake Magic King could really be said to be invincible. But now, although I can't say I'm invincible, I'm not afraid of you. Wu Ming's dragon face showed a smile. Immediately after, Wu Ming adjusted the flow of time in the world of the Sky Wings. Of course, when he said, let's just do the same to the other worlds, it was a joke. Then, Wu Ming controlled this body to lie in the center of the platform and began to act as a guardian. As for Wu Ming, he prepared to leave the major source and go on a trip. Collis, I need to find trouble with an imposter. But before Wu Ming could finish, Collis interrupted him. I will follow Master. Collis did not give Wu Ming a chance and continued. Master's backup body already has the ability to protect the major source, so I don't need to stay with it anymore. Also, Master, you said before that the next time you leave with your main body, you'll take me with you. You can't go back on your word. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. Was he reaping what he sowed? All right. After all, we haven't worked together for a long time. I'm really not used to not having your help. After all, there were many things that required knowledge, and without Collis, Wu Ming did not know what to say. After all, ever since Wu Ming obtained the nameless spellbook, he had stopped learning magic. After having Collis, he had left everything that needed to be recorded to Collis. From the looks of it, Wu Ming was very lazy. It could be said that if it was not for the nameless spellbook, Wu Ming would have even recorded the methods of using magic in Collis' database. Collis had not only complained about Wu Ming's laziness, but Wu Ming had always brushed her off with the same answer. After all, it's very hard on me. With Collis here, I don't have to work so hard to remember things. Would Collis leave me? Then, these words made Collis feel insulted, and Collis furiously retorted. How could that be? I'll always follow Master, until eternity. And then, there was no and then. Then, let's go together, my Collis. Yes, my Master, my Lord. Then, there was only a small dragon left in the major source. However, judging from the dangerous glint in its eyes from time to time, this place was not without threats even after Wu Ming left. At the very least, it could be seen from the fact that the black mud outside the route did not have the guts to enter after Wu Ming left. Chapter 563. Outside the M-shaped moon world, an ancient and noble temple that occupied a huge area was located in the void. This was a place located outside of time and space. Its name was the Crown Time Temple. Although it was a temple, it was an open-air venue. If someone stood anywhere in this temple, they only needed to raise their head to see the mysterious scene of the endless universe. On a platform located at the highest point of the innermost part of the temple, a throne comparable to the giant stone throne on the 10th floor of Nazalek was located there. On this throne, there was a man with one hand supporting his chin and the other on his abdomen. He was taking a nap with his eyes closed. Suddenly, the man spoke. Did Floros fail? The man who suddenly spoke seemed to be talking to someone. It was as if he was talking to himself. It doesn't matter. I already guessed the result. Even if you have my power, it's not realistic to deal with him. As he spoke, the man opened his eyes. His scarlet pupils seemed to contain supreme wisdom, but his eyes made people feel cold. I feel it. He's coming. As he spoke, the man looked up at the void. I didn't want to attack you so soon, Origin Dragon. I still want to see Chaldea struggle. But since you're looking for death, don't blame me. As he spoke, the man's face began to turn ferocious. His eyes turned blood red and the corners of his mouth cracked to his ears. Let my Temple of Time deal with you. On the other side, a huge white dragon was swimming in the void like the universe. Its ruby-like dragon eyes were looking around. It's almost there. Now, even without the black mud imprint, I can feel that incomparably hostile power. Although he didn't know why, Wuming now knew that he could completely sense the gathering place of those natural enemies. Then, Wuming saw the huge aperture that belonged to the M-shaped moon world and the throne of the temple embedded in the void above the aperture. It's really the periphery of the M-shaped moon world. Wuming had an expression of, I knew it. Every world was fixed in a certain place in the void. Although the M-shaped moon world had countless parallel worlds, they were all in the same place. If one entered the huge aperture directly, one would immediately enter a parallel world. And if one wanted to enter a specific parallel world or a certain point in time or even a singularity, one would need to use the space-time tunnel. Wuming used the space-time tunnel previously, but Wuming didn't find any additional singularities. Then, Wuming laughed self-deprecatingly. The other party had the power of the origin, so how could he still exist in a singularity? Wuming understood that the person he was looking for couldn't be bound by time and space, so he must be in the void of the various worlds that wasn't affected by time and space. Without any hesitation, Wuming flew straight to the temple. Just as he entered the temple, Wuming felt hostility and realized that something wanted to attack him. An indescribable voice sounded. Then, countless tentacles attacked Wuming. No, they weren't tentacles. They're actually demon god pillars. Wuming squinted his huge red dragon eyes and said. Wuming also thought that these were tentacles at first. Although demon god pillars could use tentacles, the tentacles of demon god pillars were spiral-shaped pieces of flesh. However, the tentacles that were attacking them were full of eyes. Taking a closer look, these were clearly demon god pillars. It was just that Wuming's body had become a lot bigger, so when he looked at the demon god pillars, they looked like small tentacles. Thinking about it, it's just tentacles. They're useless against my servant body, so how could they be useful against my main body? Wuming shook his head. However, could the demon god pillars themselves be enough to deal with Wuming's main body? The answer was naturally no. Roar! It was clearly the void, but Wuming's roar reverberated in the void. After hearing Wuming's roar, the demon god pillars suddenly stopped, but they didn't stop. If one looked carefully, the demon god pillars' movements would become awkward. These low-level creatures were frightened by the pressure of Wuming, a high-level creature. Sure enough, you're worthy of being that guy's subordinates. But I didn't expect to subdue you with just a roar. After saying that, Wuming didn't stop and continued to fly forward. Immediately, Wuming's body emitted light, like a lamp in the darkness. The light instantly covered the demon god pillars. Then, faint golden lightning appeared in the light. In terms of attack, this move didn't seem to cause any damage. Instead, the demon god pillars felt a warm feeling. However, Wuming's attack was naturally not that simple. The intense light made it impossible to see the demon god pillars covered by the light. Then, the light suddenly erupted with golden lightning. After a few breaths, Wuming withdrew the light, and the demon god pillars that were originally covered by the light were nowhere to be seen. The power of the Blade of Salvation isn't something that a mere demon god pillar can block, Wuming said indifferently, not taking the demon god pillar's destruction to heart. Then, Wuming continued to fly to the platform of the temple where the throne was located. As for the other demon god pillars, it was unknown whether they were afraid or under someone's orders. In short, they didn't touch Wuming anymore. Or rather, they didn't seek their own deaths. Wuming flew to the platform that was so wide that it was unseemly, and slowly descended. Dragon of Origin, have you come? Are you ready to accept your death? The man from before was still sitting on his throne with one hand supporting his chin, emitting the aura of a king. His originally ferocious face had now returned to a harmless look. After all, I don't think it's appropriate to leave you behind the scenes. As expected, it's better to get rid of you now. Wuming said casually, as if getting rid of the man on the throne was like squashing an ant. You don't have to talk nonsense with me. Dragon of Origin, if you've grown up, I might be afraid. But the current you isn't enough for me to take you seriously. The man's words were filled with arrogance. Although Wuming was very displeased, it made Wuming smile inside. No matter when, arrogance was a great taboo. Facing the arrogant man, Wuming thought he had already won half the battle. Speaking of which, I thought you were at a singularity. I didn't expect you to be in the void outside the world. Wuming didn't continue the topic from before, and instead talked about this place. Originally, Wuming thought that the other party's base was also a singularity. After all, it was burned on Earth, and the temple that had no foothold could only create a singularity to be independent. As mentioned before, Wuming thought so and entered the space-time tunnel. In the end, he didn't find a singularity. Therefore, Wuming directly came to the void. Relying on the Dragon of Origin's natural characteristic of flying freely in the void, Wuming came to the vicinity of the M-shaped moon. In the end, Wuming really did find it. It could be said that the current Temple of Time was no longer a singularity, but an existence that was truly attached to the void. If it was allowed to develop, it might even become an independent world. That was indeed the case. But one day, the black mud accidentally came to my temple. The man didn't mind Wuming changing the topic. Instead, he enthusiastically answered Wuming's question. Although Wuming already knew. The man suddenly stretched out his hand, and a mass of black substance appeared in his hand. After Wuming saw the black mud, he immediately felt uncomfortable. The feeling of a natural enemy surged in his heart. To be honest, if it was me in the past, I might have been affected by these things. However, from what I see now, these black mud are completely increasing my strength. As he spoke, the man stood up. My Temple of Time can be separated from the singularity and become independent of the world. It's all thanks to the power of Origin, Dragon of Origin. The man laughed loudly, and his face was full of devastation. That being said, you haven't fully grasped the power of Origin, have you? King Solomon's faker, or rather, it would be better to call you Gidia. Wuming's words made the man frown, and he was stunned. Chapter 564. That's right, I am Gidia, commander of the 72 Demon God Pillars Amalgamation, Demon God King Gidia. Saying that, the man's outer appearance ignited, and immediately, the man's appearance changed completely. He was humanoid, but much taller than an ordinary person, as well as strangely thick forelimbs. A hole appeared in the center of Gidia's chest, and a purple eye-like orb was embedded in the hole, making people shiver. Blood-like vein patterns didn't seem to have been adjusted, but actually covered Gidia's body in an orderly fashion, connecting to the orb in front of Gidia's chest. He couldn't be called human, but had a bald head that looked like a human. On his head grew 2 antlers, but more like tree branches. This was the demon god King Gaia. It was different from Solomon's monster, demon god King Gaia. As expected, you are King Solomon's creation. Wu Ming's draconic eyes narrowed. There's nothing strange about that. Although I'm Solomon's creation, after King Solomon's death, there's nothing strange about me occupying Solomon's body. It could be said that the 72 demon god pillars came from Solomon's magic grimoire Raymond Gayton, also known as Gidia. And after King Solomon's death, the name of the collective that was formed in King Solomon's body was very easy to guess. It was Gaia. The awakened Gidia could be said to be Solomon. After all, Solomon and Gidia were both characters who commanded the 72 demon god pillars, so it wasn't strange for Gidia to occupy the dead Solomon's body. But you really surprised me, Origin Dragon. Demon god King Gidia raised his head, looking at Wu Ming's draconic head. Even the taller Gidia wasn't as large as Wu Ming's original body. Wu Ming was still looking down on Gidia. Then, are you surprised that I know you haven't completely grasped your origin, power, or are you surprised that I know your identity? Wu Ming said with incomparable calmness. He was not frightened by Gaia's appearance that was neither human nor ghost at all. After all, he had seen too many dirty things and had gotten used to it. I have both, Gaia smiled and continued. Indeed. Although I've obtained the power of the black origin soil and used it to move my temple from the singularity to the void, that's all there is to it. In fact, I'm worse than you described. I don't actually control the power of the black origin soil at all, and I'm only relying on the byproduct of controlling the black origin soil. As if he had embarrassed himself, Gidia put the black origin soil back into his body. To be able to guess that I haven't fully grasped the power of origin, it's probably because I've never invaded another world. In response to Gidia's words, Wu Ming nodded. That's right. After all, I'm in the real origin, which is connected to other worlds. I can still do a simple check on your situation, Wu Ming said calmly. As mentioned before, the origin was like a control panel, and Wu Ming was the key to the control panel. Wu Ming, who had gradually grown by absorbing the power of the origin from the origin, gradually unlocked the power of the control panel. For example, he could use the time of the worlds that Wu Ming had visited as well as a simple check on Gidia's situation. However, that was all there was to it. The current Wu Ming didn't have the power to destroy a world with a flick of his finger. Otherwise, Gidia wouldn't have looked down on Wu Ming so much. After all, if Wu Ming had that kind of power, Wu Ming would have eliminated Gidia, who stole the power of origin. If Wu Ming wanted to possess that kind of power, he would have to grow into an adult to obtain that kind of power. Gidia knew a bit about the origin dragon through the origin black mud, so Gidia wasn't worried about Wu Ming doing anything to him. A certain person was entrusted with a treasure comparable to a nation, but because they were too young, that person couldn't open the key to the treasure, and who knew how long it would take for that person to obtain the key. As a result, some people with ulterior motives would definitely play tricks and wouldn't care about that person's thoughts. Gidia was such a person. By the time Wu Ming grew up, Gidia would have achieved his goal. Then, how did you know that I wasn't Solomon? Gidia asked. It could be said that Gidia only cared about and was surprised by this matter. In my impression, you have never seen Solomon, and your knowledge of him is only from historical records. How can you say my real identity so accurately? Then, Gidia shook his head. Don't say that because Raymond Gayton is called Gidia, you guessed that I was the one who occupied King Solomon's body. That would be too degrading. This made Wu Ming stunned for a moment. He was indeed going to say that. Oh, then make a guess, Gidia. Wu Ming looked at Gidia jokingly. Then, after Gidia thought for a few seconds, he gave Wu Ming an answer. I think the biggest possibility is that you met our king, Solomon, without me knowing. That's the case. Wuming smiled. Although Wuming's face was smiling, Wuming's heart was as if he was facing a great enemy. Gidea's IQ is inexplicably online. Those so-called great villains without IQ seem to be lying. I just saw the real King Solomon, so I knew you were fake. Based on this, I inferred your identity as Gidea. Sure enough. Gidea nodded slightly. Then, I don't know if you can see my other identity, the Dragon of Origin. This time, it was Gidea's turn to let Wuming guess. You don't need to tell me, I will do the same, the first beast. Wuming revealed Gidea's other identity. One of the 7 great human evils, the beast with the principle of mercy, Beast Eye. Wuming had already seen through Gidea's identity through the power of origin, when Gidea appeared. Even if Gidea had the origin, black soil on him, Wuming could still see through it as easily as if he saw through Fufu's identity as the 4th beast. Or rather, it was because of the origin, black soil on Gidea's body that it made it easier for Wuming to see through Gidea's identity as the first beast. It seems that I really underestimated you, Dragon of Origin. Then, Gidea raised one of his hands. In front of my great cause, you are really an eyesore. As Gidea spoke, Wuming's muscles tightened. Then, you will die here, Dragon of Origin. In an instant, countless black flames shot out from Gidea's hand toward Wuming like a machine gun. Roar! Wuming let out a furious roar, flapped his huge dragon wings, and dodged the black flames in an extremely unscientific manner. That's what I had in mind. You can leave here today, Gidea. Wuming, who had flown into the sky above the lookout, opened his mouth abruptly, and a pale golden flame shot out like a high-pressure water gun, shooting towards Gaia like a tooth for a tooth. Good timing. Gidea yelled and waved his hands. A pure energy barrier appeared before Gidea and blocked Wuming's origin, dragon breath. This was the first official confrontation between the young Dragon of Origin, Wuming, and the deity warden king, Gidea, who had obtained the origin, black soil. It could be said that whether it was Gidea's black flames or Wuming's origin, dragon breath, ordinary servants couldn't resist them at all. If they were ordinary people, they would have been burned to ashes before coming into contact with them, just like ordinary humans approaching the sun. However, for the 2 of them, who could be said to be superior in terms of status and strength, those were just ordinary attacks. Gidea never thought that his black flames could kill or even injure Wuming, and Wuming was naturally not naive enough to think that his ordinary dragon breath could burn Gidea to death. All of this was just the first confrontation. The real battle had only just begun. Chapter 565. Boom! Like a nuclear explosion, a loud sound reverberated through the entire temple. Thick smoke rose from the depths of the temple. The 72 demon god pillars appeared in various parts of the large temple, all of them staring at the depths of the temple. Swish! A white, holy figure suddenly flew out from the depths of the temple. Even with the countless eyes of the demon god pillars, they were unable to see this figure clearly. They could only hear the sound of something breaking through the air. Then, following closely behind the white figure, a black figure suddenly rushed out. This time, the demon god pillars saw clearly that it was their king, the leader of the 72 demon god pillars, the demon god King Gidea. Then, there was no need to guess who the white figure was. It was definitely the Dragon of Origin that dared to boldly fly into the depths of the temple to look for trouble with their king. In the eyes of the demon god pillars, the Dragon of Origin was being beaten back by their king, and was even being exterminated by their king. As a result, the demon god pillars began to dance wildly. Their huge tentacles constantly swayed as they rejoiced at the strength of their king. However, Gidea didn't pay attention to the situation of the demon god pillars. Instead, he focused on dealing with Wuming. Even though Gidea was chasing after Wuming, it was actually just Wuming deliberately shifting the battlefield. It wasn't that Gidia couldn't catch up to Wuming, but that he also wanted to shift the battlefield. If the demon god pillars entered the depths of the temple where Gidia was, they would discover that the depths of the temple had already been destroyed beyond recognition. As a formation similar to a battlefield, the Temple of Time could assist Gidia in dealing with the enemy. Moreover, because it was King Solomon's second precious artifact, it could be said to be relatively sturdy. There was basically no need to worry about it being destroyed. It could completely act as a battlefield. However, if the enemy was Wuming, it wouldn't work at all. As mentioned earlier, Gidia, who had obtained the black soil of origin, wasn't afraid of Wuming at all. However, before obtaining the black soil of origin, Gidia was still rather fearful of Wuming. The reason why the Dragon of Origin was called the Dragon of Origin was because it was born from the origin. Its body was extremely resistant to magic, and its defense against physical attacks wasn't weak either. This allowed the Origin Dragon to deal with its enemies with brute force. The Temple of Time was dragged out by Gidia through the black origin mud from the void where the singularity was formed. It was not strengthened because Gidia simply used the black origin mud to enhance his own strength. The Time Shrine itself was an A-grade relic. It was a relic of its own. It could be said that even Gilgamesh's parochial sword could destroy this noble artifact, so could it support Wuming and Gaia's battle here? Naturally, the answer was no. Moreover, Gidia wouldn't be so arrogant as to divert his attention to protect his noble artifact in the face of an origin dragon. As a result, the Temple of Time couldn't withstand the attacks of Wuming and Gidia, who had obtained the origin black soil. This was Gidia's seat. If possible, Gidia did not want to fight there. Wuming was also disgusted by the temple's support for Gidia. Therefore, Wuming and Gidia willingly left the Temple of Time and went outside. However, the reason Gidia followed behind Wuming wasn't because he was acting, but because he really couldn't catch up with Wuming. The black origin mud attached to Gidia and increased Gidia's various attributes. Even Gidia's D-grade agility was upgraded to A-grade. However, Wuming had 12 clones. As soon as the Phoenix form was activated, the ability to be related to time directly prevented Gidia from catching up with Wuming. If one were to look at the data, Wuming, who had been in the Origin Dragon for a long time and absorbed a large amount of Origin Dragon's power, all of his attributes were EX, which meant that he was unpredictable. However, Wuming didn't think that he could shake off Gidia by relying on his speed alone, so Wuming chose to use the Phoenix form. Wuming was very strong, but in the face of the black soil, which was his natural enemy, Wuming still felt that he was weak. Especially when the enemy was a monster like Gidia, who had obtained the origin black soil. Even if Wuming dared to fight Gidia head-on, he was still very cautious. He left the Temple of Time because Wuming was cautious, which was why he did so. However, since he had left the enemy's position, he could start again. After leaving the Temple of Time and flying into the void, Wuming suddenly turned around and whipped his huge and powerful tail at Gidia. Humph! Gidia naturally wasn't afraid. His thick fist mixed with black flames, he punched Wuming's tail. Boom! Wuming's tail was sent flying high into the air. At the same time, Wuming's head launched a platinum dragon breath at Gidia. Gidia, who had been burned, hurriedly retreated and left Wuming's attack range. After that, Wuming and Gidia stared at each other from a distance, neither moving. The situation became a standoff between the two of them. Wuming swayed his tail gently. On his white tail, there were black marks where Gidia had hit it. Those were the marks left behind by Gidia's black soil flame. In addition, there were many black marks on Wuming's body, and they were the kind that went deep into his bones. Not only that, but a lot of Wuming's dragon scales had also been shattered by Gidia's attack. Although Wuming's body was in a sorry state, Gidia wasn't bad either. Gidia's arms had burn marks, and there was a huge wound on his back that extended from his left shoulder to his right abdomen. Gidea's thick arms and thighs were also stained with black burn marks. In addition, one of Gidea's horns was also broken. Whether it was Wuming's injuries or Gidea's injuries, they were all caused by the two of them fighting like wild beasts. Gidea knew that the black soil origin restrained Wuming, so he would mix in the black soil origin in every attack. The burn marks on Wuming's body were all caused by Gidea using the black soil origin as the raw material to release the black flames. When facing the black soil origin, Wuming seemed to have no defense. Neither his dragon scales nor his magic power could defend against the black soil origin's attacks, and they were directly penetrated. Often, Gidea's flames would directly burn through Wuming's scales and muscles. Every time Wuming was attacked, it was as if he had inhaled a fatal poison, and the intense pain was mixed with intense dizziness. However, thanks to this, Wuming also took the opportunity to deal a lot of heavy blows to Gidea. The huge wound on Gidea's back had been caused by Wuming's blade of salvation, and the broken horns on Gidea's body had also been cut off by Wuming's blade of salvation. The burn marks on his body had been caused by Wuming's origin breath. Indeed, the origin breath didn't have much effect on Gidea, but many little drops made an ocean. Wuming had successfully caused a lot of damage to Gidea by repeatedly spitting out flames and condensing them into lines of fire. However, it was thanks to the black soil origin that he was able to cause double the damage to Gidea. After all, Wuming and the black soil origin were mutually reinforcing and counteracting. From the injuries of the two, it could be seen how much Gidea regretted his decision. This was also the reason why Gidea chose to leave the position that was advantageous to him. Gidea guessed that if they continued fighting like this, the Temple of Time would probably be directly torn apart. I didn't expect that. I still underestimated you, Dragon of Origin. You actually have so many tricks up your sleeve, Gidea said to Wuming calmly. Wuming's own abilities weren't enough to be fatal to Gidea. What was fatal to Gidea were Wuming's divine blade of salvation and his 12 incarnations. Whether it was Wuming's own abilities or the origin breath, Gidea wasn't afraid of them at all. Indeed, they wouldn't have any effect on Gidea. However, if it was the divine blade of salvation that was originally very strong and had been evolved by the origin after being obtained by Wuming, as well as the 12 incarnations that came from the fusion of the two gods' 12 attributes, Gidea would have to be more vigilant. Why do you think I dared to cause trouble for you? Even if you've obtained the black soil origin, you're too arrogant, Gidea. With that, Wuming directly roared, and a fireball appeared from Wuming's mouth. It was Wuming's sun incarnation. Immediately afterward, the fireball became so huge that it was large enough to cover Gidea. Then, Wuming suddenly pushed the fireball at Gidea at an extremely fast speed. Don't think that you can defeat me just because you have some tricks, Dragon of Origin. After saying that, Gidea spread open his arms, and in an instant, a large light will appeared behind him. The large light will gathered power in an instant, and then a purple-black beam of light blasted at Wuming. Boom, the battle was still ongoing. Chapter 566. Inside the Root of Origin, Wuming's backup machine, which was lying on the platform and taking a nap, suddenly woke up. Wuming shifted his consciousness to the backup machine. Gidea actually attracted the other black origin mud that was wandering in the void, and then self-destructed. Wuming recalled what had happened with a gloomy expression. After Wuming and Gidea left the Time God's temple, they first used the sun incarnation to clash with Gidea's third relic, causing a violent explosion. If the demon god pillars had not combined their powers to form a defense, they and the Time God's temple would have been destroyed by Wuming and Gidea's attacks. The Time God's temple was saved, although it was still in a shattered state. The 72 demon god pillars were also almost destroyed. Although they had been revived, they were still heavily injured. Then, Wuming directly returned to his human form, and used the power of the 12 incarnations and the divine blade of salvation to fight Gidea to a standstill. However, overall, Wuming had the upper hand. However, Gideon was someone who had lived for thousands of years. The black origin mud that he possessed could not hurt Wuming, so he used the black origin mud that was scattered in the void to trap Wuming. Wuming was almost trapped in the black origin mud that Gideon had gathered. The black origin mud was a substance without a consciousness. It was also because of this that Wuming was not afraid of the black origin mud. Wuming was most afraid of people using the black origin mud against him. The black origin mud was like a gun. Wuming was an ordinary person, and an ordinary person would not be afraid of an inanimate object. However, if someone picked up a gun and fired at Wuming, Wuming's life would be in danger. The 12 incarnations and the divine blade of salvation were Wuming's guns. With a gun, Wuming could fight back against the person who used a gun against him. That's right, because Wuming and the black origin mud countered each other, they were basically two berserkers. However, there was a limit to how well they countered each other. Gideon had gathered almost all the black origin mud in the void. Wuming in his human form was like a lone boat in the sea. It could be said that if it were not for the 12 incarnations and the divine blade of salvation, Wuming would have died in the black origin mud tide. If Silent Wonder was subdued by the black origin soil, Gaia would not mind killing him. From Wuming's current situation, it could be seen that Wuming's outcome was still not good. When Gaia saw that Wuming was about to escape from the origin black soil's encirclement, he made a bold decision. He directly let the black origin mud self-destruct. For example, in a sealed secret room, an ordinary person was holding a pesticide and killing insects. However, because he really couldn't touch the insects, he directly tore apart the pesticide sprayer violently and sprayed the pesticide everywhere in the secret room. In this way, the insects were finished. But it should be known that pesticides were also harmful to the human body. Kill 1,000 enemies, but lose 800 of your own. Wuming's body disappeared in the explosion of the black origin mud, and Gideon was also injured by the self-destruction of the black origin mud. Wuming could guess what Gideon was thinking. The current Wuming was quite difficult to deal with. After letting him go, there was no guarantee that Wuming would not become stronger again. It could only be said that Gideon was worthy of his reputation. He didn't even think about it, or it could be said that he directly detonated the black origin mud after careful consideration. As a result, Wuming's body disappeared, Gideon was injured, and the black origin mud was almost completely destroyed. Wuming, who had temporarily transferred his consciousness, knew that his body didn't die, but was injured more severely than Gideon, and had been blasted to some unknown world. For example, could you imagine someone detonating the earth to kill an ordinary person? It could be said that if Wuming hadn't been soaking in the black origin for a long time to absorb its power to evolve, he would probably have died. No, it should be said that even Wuming would have died in such a situation when he was fighting Artesius. It seems that the black origin is really a hotbed for me. Wuming was a little regretful. He should have soaked in the black origin for a while before looking for Gideon. At the very least, he wouldn't have been forced to transfer his consciousness because of the black origin mud's explosion. Wuming had transferred his consciousness because the black origin mud's self-destruction didn't just target his body, but also his mind. Physical damage could be recovered, but if his mind collapsed, it would basically be over. Fortunately, Gideon helped me solve part of the problem. Gideon had gathered almost all of the black origin mud in the void of various worlds and detonated them. It could be said that Wuming no longer had to worry about the black origin mud in the void. However, the black origin mud didn't only exist in the void. According to Wuming's experience, Wuming already knew that a lot of black origin mud had entered various worlds. Moreover, there was no guarantee that Gideon wouldn't mass-produce the black origin mud himself. Wuming guessed that the reason the black origin mud was endless was because of its asexual reproduction ability. Wuming didn't believe that such a large amount of black origin mud really came from the black origin. The most important evidence was the image Wuming saw when he came into contact with the black origin mud mark. The amount of black origin mud that left the black origin mud from the black origin wasn't as much as what Gidia had detonated. The black origin mud only appeared after Wuming was sent away from the black origin. And Wuming knew his own situation. He didn't stay in the black origin world for long before he was sent to another world to grow. What a headache. Wuming reached out his dragon claw and rubbed his head. This was great. Kalas and Enkidu were both on Wuming's main body, and the two of them disappeared with Wuming's main body. However, no matter what, Gidia didn't have the ability to play any tricks now. The self-destruction of the black origin mud was enough for him to deal with. I have to find my main body as soon as possible. It's hard to calculate the time. After all, the flow of time in the world that Wuming's main body entered might be different from the black origin world. The self-destruction of the black origin mud just now had temporarily disrupted Wuming's control of the black origin world. It would take some time before Wuming could find out where his main body was through the black origin world. And Wuming's current main body couldn't leave the black origin world. Who knew if there were any fish that slipped through the net in the void? If the black origin mud invaded, Wuming would have nowhere to cry. Sigh, looks like I can only wait. Wuming lay down on the platform and started to rest. Although Wuming had shifted his consciousness in time, Wuming's consciousness was still greatly affected. Now, Wuming felt like his head had been run over by a truck. It's hard to imagine what would happen to me if I was completely injured by the self-destruction of the black origin mud. If he was slightly affected, it would be like being run over by a truck. If he was completely injured, he would probably have a mental breakdown. At this moment, a letter suddenly fell from the black origin world to Wuming's head. A letter. This gave Wuming a fright. Wuming didn't have any malicious intent in this letter. In the black origin world, Wuming was half invincible. He could still detect the danger of a letter. In other words, this was a harmless letter. Then, Wuming used his telekinesis to pick up the letter that fell on his head. There was nothing else on the snow-white envelope except for the red ink on the back, which was used to ensure that the letter was sealed. It looked like a simple and plain letter that couldn't be any more simple. However, Wuming narrowed his eyes and started to think about the problem. The black origin world wasn't a place that anyone could enter. Now that Wuming was guarding the black origin world, not just anyone could enter. Unless Wuming agreed to it. Wuming looked at the letter and suddenly thought of a possibility. But before opening the letter, Wuming gathered his power and created a servant's spiritual base. This was in preparation for him to help Gadotsi at the next singularity. Then, Wuming opened the letter. Chapter 567. Above a large lake near the outer gate of Eastern District 2105380 in the box court world. All of a sudden, 4 figures, 2 men and 2 women, appeared 10,000 meters above the ground. Since they could not let Newton faint from crying in the toilet, the 4 figures were falling vertically due to gravity. Wuming opened his eyes, but when he noticed his current state, he did not do anything. Instead, he was thinking deeply about what had happened. On the platform inside the root of origin, Wuming opened the letter after creating a spiritual base. Immediately after that, Wuming felt that the letter was pulling him as if it was taking him somewhere. But it was clear that the letter had failed. Even if it was a backup body, the body was made from the flesh of the root of origin dragon. How could a mere letter move Wuming? Moreover, this was inside the root of origin. The half-invincible Wuming could not be pulled away no matter how one thought about it. However, Wuming had a hunch. This letter is definitely a signal sent by my real body. With that in mind, Wuming decided to take a look at the world that the letter wanted to pull him into. With the automatic management of the root of origin, there was no need to worry about the root of origin being lost. However, it also meant that Wuming's backup body could not go. Therefore, Wuming emptied his mind and allowed the letter to pull his spirit over. That was right. Wuming was now a spiritual body. No, to be precise, Wuming was now a spirit. Wuming's current state could also be called a heroic spirit. The heroic spirit's clone was called a servant. Wuming, on the other hand, had directly materialized his spiritual body. Instead of weakening the clone, he had retained the full strength of his real body. The only difference from his real body was that Wuming could not transform into the root of origin dragon's gigantic dragon form. Moreover, everything about Wuming was a magical projection without a physical body. Whether it was his tools or relics, they were all illusory. However, those tools and relics could not be used. Therefore, at this moment, Wuming's spiritual body could be called a heroic spirit state. Then, Wuming's heroic spirit state opened his eyes and appeared 10,000 meters high in the sky of this world. In short, he had arrived in an unknown world. Although Wuming had sorted it out in his mind, Wuming's doubts grew. It was his doubts about this unknown world, or rather, his desire to explore the unknown world had become more burdensome. After all, Wuming was a traveler. After thinking about it for a while, Wuming came back to his senses and began to look around. Then, he discovered his current situation. Am I in the sky? Although Wuming in the sky, Wuming, 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 Wuming. Then, Wuming looked at the remaining man and two women who were in free fall like him. The four of them were in a state of four different forms of free fall. Each of them occupied a corner. First, Wuming looked at the person on his left. He had short, light blonde hair and purple eyes. He was wearing a pair of headphones that looked more like headbands than listening to music. He was dressed in a dark blue high school uniform and looked like a delinquent. He had an unruly and surprised smile on his face. Wuming understood his smile. It was the excitement and joy of encountering an extraordinary phenomenon after losing all passion for ordinary phenomena. He looks like a problem child. Wuming commented in his mind. Then, Wuming looked at the person on his right. It was a young lady with the temperament of a rich lady. Her beautiful face was frowning slightly. She had black waist-length hair and flat bangs on her forehead. The ends of her long hair on both sides of her forehead were tied into braids. Two red bows were tied on both sides of her head. She wore a pure white uniform with a yellow tie and a conservative dark blue traditional dress that reached her calves. This was also a problem child, and it was a problem child in the feudal and conservative style of a rich lady. Wuming commented. Finally, Wuming looked at the expressionless girl who was holding a cat with 3 different colors of fur. Beautiful short brown hair. She was not beautiful, but she had a delicate face like a doll. There was a silver hairpin on the side of her short hair, which added a bit of cuteness to the girl. He was wearing a white sleeveless top and orange shorts, and a sleeveless white trench coat with blue edges. Around his neck was a carving that looked like a pendant. On his feet, he was wearing knee-high socks and calf-high boots. This unique combination gave people a feeling that they were dazzling, but there must be a demonic sense of evil under that face. Simply put, this was also a problem child. Wuming was quite troubled. Thinking about it carefully, although Wuming was not interested in causing trouble, Wuming himself was also half a problem child. I feel like I'm in trouble, Wuming said lightly. Then, to relax, Wuming looked at the scenery in the distance. As a ghost that was doing a vertical descent from a height of 10,000 meters, Wuming thought that the scenery here was quite good. Just kidding, in the distance, Wuming saw areas covered by transparent semicircles. Countless areas that looked like greenhouse bases were closely adjacent to each other, and then extended into the distance that he could not see the end of. Those transparent semicircles that looked like greenhouse sheds were some barriers. This was Wuming's judgment. Around the transparent sheds were a lush forest that covered a large area. The area that Wuming was in looked like a lush forest. All in all, this was a large area, at least much larger than Earth. However, Wu Ming was quite interested in this vast area that he could not see the end of. Even with Wu Ming's eyesight, he could not see the end, so one could imagine how big this world was. And the vastness of the world meant that there were many unknown pleasures. The reason why Wu Ming was a traveler was because of his desire to explore the unknown. However, this was not without its drawbacks. This meant that it would be very troublesome for Wu Ming to find his main body. However, seeing that he was getting closer to the ground, Wu Ming, who was about to fall, did not think about other things for the time being. Let's land safely first. As he said that, Wu Ming activated his telekinesis. In an instant, including Wu Ming, the 4 people that fell from the sky seemed to be supported by something invisible as they floated steadily to the ground. Yo, little brother, this is your method, right? It's quite interesting, isn't it? Let me thank you first. First, the delinquent young man greeted Wu Ming and thanked him after landing. It's just a small trick using my telekinesis, it's not worth mentioning. Wu Ming shook his head. Then, Wu Ming looked at the giant lake beside him. Moreover, even without me, you would only fall into this lake, at least your lives would not be in danger. But in the end, you still helped us, didn't you? The blonde young man smiled and waved his hand indifferently. I agree with this delinquent young man, even if the original result was good, but I, Jojo Fei Niao, was saved by you, the necessary gratitude is necessary. The lady named Jojo Fei Niao also thanked Wu Ming. Thank you. On the other hand, the girl who was hugging the cat was quite nimble. She didn't say anything and directly thanked Wu Ming. The 3 of them were people with strong personalities, so Wu Ming had no choice but to accept their gratitude. Then, the 4 of them exchanged names. By the way, could it be that you guys also received that strange letter? The young man named 16 Nights asked the others with a smile. Ah, so 16th Eventide has also received that letter. Miss Jiao Fei Niao replied with her arms crossed. Same. The delicate girl named Haruhi Byayoshi nodded. Me too. Wu Ming was the same. However, Wu Ming did not feel that the letter he received was the same as the 3 problem children. He wanted to ask why. One word, intuition, for all ***. However, Wu Ming did not want to be an anomaly. He wanted to be like the 3 of them. Let's not talk about the letter for now. Little brother, you're not human, right? Suddenly, 16 Nights looked at Wu Ming with an arrogant smile. Chapter 568. This made Wu Ming frown. Could it be that this seemingly delinquent boy was actually hostile towards non-humans? Don't worry, it's just that your powerful aura is making my blood boil. Normal humans can't possibly make me think this way. Wu Ming then realized that 16 Nights, Zhou Yuki, and Haruhi Byayoshi were standing a little far away from him. Sorry, I feel a little uncomfortable being close to you. This was what Zhou Yuki said. I'm fine, it's just that Sanmao cat feels uncomfortable. This was what Haruhi Byayoshi said. Including 16 Nights, the 3 of them were slightly further away from Wu Ming because of the pressure from Wu Ming's powerful aura. Wu Ming had used his spiritual form twice. The first time was when he was pulled over by Wu Ming's semi-fixed barrier, and the second time was when Wu Ming took the initiative to use it. Although the physical body was different, Wu Ming's spiritual form was the same. Because Attila was the giant god, and because Wu Ming was unfamiliar with spiritual power and had never fought with Gidia before, Wu Ming didn't put too much pressure on Attila. This time, Wu Ming's current state could be said to be the first time Wu Ming used his spiritual form on his own. In addition, he had just fought with Gidia, so the pressure didn't lose its effect because Wu Ming was a spiritual form. I'm sorry. Wu Ming smiled bitterly and retracted his pressure. I just fought with a powerful enemy, so I didn't adjust. I'm really sorry. Facing Wu Ming's apology, the two problem children accepted it as a matter of course. I, Yuki, forgive you. This time, we're even. Yuki waved her hand. Ditto. Haruhibu Yao was still hugging the cat with a look of indifference. Only 16 Knights didn't care about Wu Ming's apology for unintentionally releasing his pressure. Instead, he was very interested in Wu Ming's pressure and the enemy that Wu Ming thought was powerful. Why, are you interested? Wu Ming looked at 16 Knights with interest. Of course, little brother, do you want to spar with me? Wu Ming was silent. It wasn't because someone he just met wanted to spar with him, although it was more or less. Wu Ming was slightly surprised. Falling from a height of 10,000 meters, he didn't seem to be frightened at all. He wasn't interested in Wu Ming's telekinesis either. He didn't panic even after coming to an unknown world. More importantly, these three boys and girls, they weren't affected by Wu Ming's. That was comparable to the world, or even a higher level of pressure. Wu Ming looked like an ordinary human, but the three boys and girls only subconsciously distanced themselves from Wu Ming. They didn't react to Wu Ming's pressure. Only distanced themselves from Wu Ming by a little. Only. It was obvious that these three seemingly ordinary humans were not ordinary at all and were not simple at all. Now, if someone suddenly told Wu Ming that they were the chosen ones, which was quite ridiculous, Wu Ming would believe it. Then, Wu Ming did something that would be considered a bully in the eyes of those who knew Wu Ming's abilities. Alright, let's spar. Let me see what's so special about you guys. Wu Ming thought. After hearing Wu Ming's words, 16 Knights smiled, and it was the purest kind of smile. Seeing this smile, Wu Ming was sure that this seemingly ordinary human Wu Ming wasn't as ordinary as he looked on the surface. Then, just as 16 Knights was about to tell Wu Ming what was a normal brawl, exclusive to male high school students, a rabbit suddenly jumped out. Stop. Stop. Please don't fight. Black Rabbit will be very distressed. A blue-haired girl wearing a rabbit costume as a bunny girl suddenly jumped out from the bushes. She looked at Silent and 16 Knights who were about to start fighting with each other with a troubled expression. Cosplay. It's cosplay, right? Oh, this is really pleasing to the eye. The three problem children each expressed their opinions. However, Wu Ming didn't think that this girl who seemed to be cosplaying was cosplaying because he felt the power of God from this rabbit girl. After all, Wu Ming was half a god slayer. Although he didn't bring the body of a god slayer with him, thanks to his time as a half-god slayer, Wu Ming's understanding of gods and things related to gods was still quite sensitive. Black Rabbit is not a cosplay. Black Rabbit is the noble Moon Rabbit, a nobleman. The girl named Black Rabbit shouted in exasperation, trying to prove her innocence. Moon Rabbit. Wu Ming thought thoughtfully. Wu Ming knew this word. Back in the world of the God Slayers, Wu Ming read a lot of books about mythology to deal with the various gods, although Wu Ming later found it troublesome and asked Collis to save it in the database. Ahem, but Wu Ming still knew a lot of myths and legends, and the story of Moon Rabbit happened to be a myth that Wu Ming knew. According to legend, Moon Rabbit jumped into the fire and sacrificed herself in order to save an old man. Then, this action moved Sakura, and she was taken in by Sakura. In short, Moon Rabbit was a rabbit that lived by the principle of sacrifice and dedication. Black Rabbit should be the descendant of Moon Rabbit or something like that. But what was a nobleman? Wu Ming really didn't know about this. At this time, Haruhi Hibaku appeared behind Black Rabbit without anyone noticing. I'll catch it. Then, Haruhi Hibaku grabbed one of Black Rabbit's rabbit ears, and at the same time, he also added a voice for himself. Wah! You! What are you doing? Why are you grabbing Black Rabbit's rabbit ears? Black Rabbit looked as if her lifeline was grabbed. She nervously grabbed Haruhi Hibaku's hand that was grabbing Black Rabbit's rabbit ears with tears in her eyes. Because I want to know if you're cosplaying or not. Haruhi Hibaku showed a smug expression, and then the hand that was grabbing Black Rabbit's ear pulled up slightly. Wah, please stop. Black Rabbit was about to, no, it was already about to cry. Oh, could it be that it's a real rabbit ear? Let me try too. As she said that, Milady grabbed Black Rabbit's other rabbit ear. Wah! Black Rabbit let out a mournful cry that resounded through the sky, and a group of birds flew out of the forest in fright. Don't tell me you want to pull that moon rabbit's ear too. Wuming looked at Reverse 16 Knights, who was eager to try. Reverse 16 Knights smiled. I want to, but that rabbit's ear is occupied by Haruhi Hibaku and Milady. Moreover, Reverse 16 Knights looked at Wuming with a fighting spirit. I'm more interested in fighting with you. Stop. Fighting is prohibited. Black Rabbit, who had finally broken free from Haruhi Hibaku's and Jo Yuasuke's torment, suddenly came in front of Wuming and Reverse 16 Knights. Then, Black Rabbit took out a folding fan from nowhere, and hit Reverse 16 Knights and Wuming on the head. You bunch of problematic adults. Neither Reverse 16 Knights nor Wuming dodged, and both of them were hit by Black Rabbit's folding fan. Thank you for the compliment. Reverse 16 Knights smiled at Black Rabbit. I'm not complimenting you. Reverse 16 Knights, who treated problematic child as a compliment, made Black Rabbit feel helpless. However, Wuming felt that Reverse 16 Knights was deliberately teasing Black Rabbit. Speaking of which, I didn't do anything, so why did you hit me? Wuming subconsciously rubbed the spot on his head that Black Rabbit hit. Black Rabbit did not use any force, but Wuming was slightly unhappy that he was dragged into this. I just agreed to Reverse 16 Knights' request. That's all. Wuming looked at Black Rabbit with a smile. Wuming would never admit that his smile at this moment was extremely mischievous. Wuming's words of, that's all, made Black Rabbit feel quite helpless. Do you want to fight until there are casualties before you're happy? However, Reverse 16 Knights laughed. What are you talking about, little brother? I'm the one who picked a fight, and you're the one who fought back. Wuming, on the other hand, smiled with interest. In other words, this fight must be fought, and it must be fought at this moment. Stop. Mr. Villo only agreed, I haven't made a move yet. Black Rabbit protested. However, to Reverse 16 Knights, Wuming's answer was the beginning of the fight. In other words, it was the so-called fight back. Looking at Reverse 16 Knights who did not listen at all, Black Rabbit's shoulders drooped. Then, let's postpone this fight. Can we listen to Black Rabbit explain the box court world to everyone? This sentence made Jo Yuasuke and Haruhito Yayoi, who were ready to ambush Black Rabbit, Reverse 16 Knights whose eyes were already burning with desire, and Wuming who was paying attention to Black Rabbit all look at Black Rabbit. Seeing that the problematic child was so obedient, Black Rabbit smiled. Then, let's listen to Black Rabbit's explanation. Chapter 569. Then, after the Black Rabbit walked around in circles, it began to explain this world called Box Court World. First of all, welcome to the box world. Black Rabbit opened her hands and closed one of her eyes playfully. With a smile on her face, she spoke a very enthusiastic opening line to Wuming and the other three. It feels so perfunctory. Haruhito Hikari whispered to Jo Yuasuke. Indeed. Jo Yuasuke nodded respectfully. Hey! Black Rabbit instantly collapsed again. Just kidding. 2. Because Black Rabbit was teased, its ears drooped, and it looked like it couldn't take it anymore. Seeing that it was about time, 16 Knights waved his hand. Let's cut to the chase. What exactly is this box court world? 16 Knights asked rudely. Really, Mr. 16 Knights is so rude. Black Rabbit complained. However, Wuming's next words made Black Rabbit's tail tighten. Let's not talk about whether it's rude or not, the person who was eavesdropping over there was you. As he said that, Wuming pointed to a bush. You. What are you talking about, Mr. Villo? Black Rabbit was just passing by for some reason, ahahaha. Wuming's unwavering gaze caused Black Rabbit to stop its awkward performance. Yes, I'm sorry, Black Rabbit shouldn't hide and eavesdrop, but that's all reasonable. However, Wuming directly interrupted Black Rabbit's words. Okay, I didn't want to blame you. If I guessed correctly, you should have a lot to do with us coming to this world. Wuming's words made Black Rabbit's body tremble, and its ears drooped again. Oh, little brother, you're starting to suspect this rabbit too. 16 Knights looked at Wuming with a typical delinquent smile on his face. There's no other way. Wuming spread his hands. When we were still some distance away from the ground, I released my mental power to explore the surroundings. Not to mention the area blocked by the barrier, within the area of thousands of square meters, there are no other humanoid creatures other than the four of us and the Black Rabbit. Over 1,000 square meters. Jiuyuan Flying Bird was shocked by Wuming's spiritual perception. Not only Kyugu Osaka, but Black Rabbit and Haruai Bia were also shocked. Even Reverse 16 Knights, who had always been calm in the face of such a situation, was shaken. It could be seen from his increasingly excited face. I have a question. Can Avillo's psychic power spread that far? Haruai Abe held the cat in one hand and raised his other hand. He looked quite cute. If I spread out in all directions with me as the center, the range can be much larger. If I only explore in one direction, Wuming closed his eyes and opened them a few seconds later to look at the local Black Rabbit. There's a spectacular waterfall in the easternmost area. There's also a snake there. If there's a chance, let's go check it out together. Could that be the world's end? Black Rabbit looked at Wuming in shock. The world's end. 3 good heavens. This made the 3 problem children excited. Although this is the closest place to the world's end, it's still tens of thousands of meters away. It seems that Mr. Villo has an extremely powerful gift. Then, Black Rabbit looked at Reverse 16 Knights and the other 2 problem children who were eager to go and quickly waved his hand. You must not go there. The Water God is there. The snake that Mr. Villo saw is Lord Water God. Now that you mention it, I want to go even more. Reverse 16 Knights' words almost made Black Rabbit cry again. Water God. Sounds like a god. If there's a chance, let's go check it out. Jiuyuan Flying Bird did not want to go immediately. However, in Black Rabbit's opinion, it was dangerous for problem children to have such thoughts. Snake. I don't hate snakes. If possible, I would like to become friends with Lord Snake, Haruai Toshi said to the cat in his arms. However, this sentence sounded gentle, but in Black Rabbit's opinion, it was also quite dangerous. Problem children were all troublemakers. Speaking of which, that snake stared at me just now. Looks like I'll have to teach it a lesson. Wuming was purely having fun. Please take back your troublemaking thoughts. Black Rabbit felt that she could not do it anymore. Speaking of which, are you actually a wizard? Reverse 16 Knights looked at Wuming. Not really. Compared to a wizard, I prefer a warrior who uses his fists to his flesh, Wuming joked. Then, is the telekinesis from before also a type of spirit power? Jiuyuan Flying Bird asked. That's right. As long as the spirit power is strong enough, it is not a problem to affect the real world. Wuming nodded. Then, Villo, can you use your telekinesis to make Black Rabbit stand upside down? Finally, Haruai Toshi asked the most dangerous question for Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit was stunned. Of course. As soon as Wuming finished speaking, Black Rabbit felt her body floating. No, she really floated. Then, Black Rabbit, who was 1 meter above the ground, was suddenly flipped over. Ah! Black Rabbit let out a sound that a girl should have, and tightly held onto her miniskirt. I'll grab it. Haruai Toshi and Joyuen Flying Bird took the opportunity to grab the rabbit's naturally drooping ears. Ah! Please. Please stop, what's with this miniskirt? Does it defy gravity? Reverse 16 Knights looked at the miniskirt in confusion. Even though she was flipped upside down, she still did not fall due to gravity. I'm afraid it's a special piece of clothing, Wuming said to Reverse 16 Knights. So that's how it is. This box is really amazing. 16 Knights clenched her fist and punched her other hand. Looking at Wuming and 16th Knights who seemed to be studying something important, Black Rabbit was completely enraged. You bunch of problematic children. A minute later, the 4 people, including Wuming, sat on a white cloth that Black Rabbit took out from a card. Black Rabbit, whose hair suddenly turned pink, knelt elegantly in front of the 4 people. According to Black Rabbit, her hair would only change color when her emotions changed drastically or when she was ready for battle. Needless to say, the reason why her hair changed color this time was because of Wuming and the others. Then, Black Rabbit, who gradually calmed down, regained her blue hair and sighed helplessly. Really, how did Black Rabbit meet such a group of problematic adults? It must be said that Black Rabbit was indeed a descendant of the Moon Rabbit clan. But in terms of dedication and sacrifice, Wuming felt that she was already qualified. Being teased by the people she just met, constantly grabbing her rabbit ears, and being turned upside down. It could be said that she almost lost her virginity. Anyone would be furious. Although Black Rabbit was also angry, she only pretended to be angry and then lectured Wuming and the others. Wuming simply knew that he could not make too much of a fuss, so he went along with Black Rabbit's idea. But as for the remaining 3 problematic children, Black Rabbit's hair can change color. Sigh, how interesting. Joyuen Fei looked at Black Rabbit's hair covetously. It is indeed interesting. Haruai Hiroyuki nodded and stroked his cat, as if he was considering whether his cat could change color. However, the cat did not give him face and shook its cat head in a very human-like manner. Stop, Black Rabbit. Don't play with Black Rabbit's hair anymore. Black Rabbit said helplessly. Black Rabbit's ears too. Seeing that the 2 wanted to say something, Black Rabbit quickly added. Tisk, X2, stop it, Black Rabbit, I heard you. Then, Black Rabbit's expression became teary again. Really, a group of problematic children, okay. It's about time to get to the main topic. Wuming interrupted the farce. At this time, Black Rabbit realized that she was going to explain the matter of Hakata to the 4 people, but she was interrupted by Wuming. In the end, it led to this series of events. In the end, if you think about it carefully, it's all the little brother's fault. 16 Knights looked at Wuming, who did not mind the trouble, and looked at Wuming with a mischievous smile. A lady will not cover for a criminal. Jiu Fei now flipped her hair and said calmly. However, her curved lips betrayed her. Yeah. Haruai Hiroyuki nodded fatally. Then, Black Rabbit looked like she was about to cry again. It's all Mr. Villo's fault. Chapter 570. Wuming's apology calmed Black Rabbit down a little, although 60 Knights, Jo Yuki, and Haruai Hikari were still unhappy. Then, let's not talk about our problem for now. Please explain this world first. Then, according to Wuming's request, Black Rabbit began its original purpose, which was to explain the Suida world to the 3. Actually, you've all discovered that you have magical abilities that are different from ordinary people. It's because of this ability that you've been invited to this courtyard world to participate in the gift game. After Black Rabbit finished speaking, Wuming vaguely observed 16 knights and the other two. 16 knights still looked like a bad boy without any change, but Yuki and Hiroi Hikari's expressions changed slightly. This meant that these two girls did indeed have abilities that were different from ordinary people. Actually, thinking about it, Wuming excluded himself for now. Thinking about it carefully, whether it was 16 knights who wanted to have a fight with Wuming, or Yuki and Hiroi Hikari who looked weak but were actually not that simple, the three of them were not as simple as they looked. Just from the fact that they did not panic in an unfamiliar environment, or even in a foreign world, one could see that the three of them were not ordinary people. It was because they were not ordinary people that 16 knights and the others could come to this world, or rather, they had the qualifications to be invited to this world. I'm afraid the so-called invitation is that letter. Wuming pondered. Those abilities are basically abilities bestowed by the Asura gods, Buddhas, fairies, demons, and stars. We call these abilities gifts, Black Rabbit continued. Wuming thought about this sentence for a while. Wuming was not from this world, but according to this statement, most of Wuming's abilities were indeed given by Asura gods, demons, fairies, stars, and other existences. And the gift game is a competition that uses gifts as a wager to compete. This world is a stage prepared for this. Black Rabbit said with a serious smile. Looks like she is very good at giving speeches. She has been a host many times. Wuming guessed. Since it's a competition, then anything can be gambled, right? Wuming interrupted Black Rabbit. Good question. Black Rabbit smiled. There are many types of bets. Not only can you bet on gifts, but you can also bet on gold coins, land, reputation, rights, and even the person itself. The more bets you put in, the more you will get. Isn't this a casino? Wuming complained in his heart. But I don't think it's as simple as you said, Black Rabbit. After all, this was the survival principle of a world. How could it be as simple as a casino? Wouldn't that be a mess? Yes, if you want to participate in the competition, you have to get permission from the organizer, hoster, or reach the standards set by the organizer, hoster, before you can participate. Then, the Black Rabbit closed one eye, tilted its head, and extended a finger, looking playfully at Wuming and the other three. As for the rewards, you have to fulfill the conditions set by the organizer, hoster, before you can get them. Then, the organizer, hoster, should be in existence that anyone can be as long as they can prepare the rewards. Wuming said. Yes, Mr. Villo is right. It seems that Mr. Villo has a very thorough understanding of box court. Black Rabbit smiled at Wuming. So that's how it is. To put it simply, this world is decided by the game, right? Wuming suddenly asked. According to Black Rabbit's explanation and Wuming's conclusion, it reminded Wuming of the other world where he gave the throne of the only god to the weakest god. The god of games, Tetu. Wuming guessed that 1,000 years later in that world, it would be similar to box court now. After all, it was the god of games. Wuming didn't even need to think to know what Tetu would do to that world. Well, in short, there won't be any war. It couldn't be said that Wuming understood Tetu. As a god born from Rick's wish, it was destined that he wouldn't be as violent as the other gods. Moreover, Rick's wish was to stop the war. Wuming believed that Tetu, born from Rick's faith, would definitely abide by this wish. Or rather, he would subconsciously abide by it. If that's the case, the bestowal tournament can also be considered a game. The lowest difficulty of the bestowal tournament is the simplest form of lottery. Then, Black Rabbit's face instantly darkened. Like a demon, he looked at Wuming and the other three sneakily. As for the highest difficulty, you'll have to face the Asura gods and Buddhas in a battle of life and death. Really? 16 knights suddenly jumped up. Yes, of course it's true, Black Rabbit said proudly. Black Rabbit didn't notice 16 Knight's expression, and thought that he was frightened. Ha ha ha. That's great. The box court world is truly a beautiful place. 16 Knights bumped his fists together with a look of extreme excitement. Ah. Ah. Black Rabbit was shocked. This situation doesn't seem right. Shouldn't it be, because it's too dangerous? Black Rabbit is asking for a safe and effective way to participate in the bestowal tournament while still being able to survive? Sounds like a good idea. You can only enjoy fun when there's danger. I gave up my wealth to come here. Wouldn't it be too boring if I stayed here peacefully? Zhou Yuan Flying Bird also had a not bad expression on his face. Even Miss Fei now was like this. Black Rabbit was close to being stunned. I just want to make friends. Haruhi Masaaki's words gave Black Rabbit a glimmer of hope. But since the two of them are excited, then I'll be the same. Alright, the Black Rabbit was completely dumbfounded. What kind of logic was this? But fortunately, Wuming didn't give Black Rabbit a fatal blow. I don't mind. Although I was invited, I'm only here to look for something. Wuming's words made Black Rabbit react. Speaking of which, Black Rabbit only sent out 3 letters. Why were 4 people summoned? 16 Knights and the others didn't know this question. Only Wuming knew about it. I think your 3 letters should be inviting the 3 of them. As for my letter, it's not that simple. But this gave Black Rabbit a fright. Could it be that there's a community that invited Mr. Villo? But that shouldn't be. No, if that's really the case, then it's terrible. Could it be that Black Rabbit inadvertently stole people from other communities? Community. This gave Wuming a good piece of information. Wuming guessed that it might be the name of an organization in this world, just like the Magic Association in the Godslayer world. But thanks to this information, Wuming could more or less guess the reason why Black Rabbit summoned 16 Knights and the others back and treated Wuming and the others so kindly. Looking at Black Rabbit's worried look, it was obvious that Black Rabbit's community wasn't strong, or rather, super weak, so it was afraid of disputes with other communities. And Black Rabbit summoned talents from another world to supplement the community's strength. From Black Rabbit's hesitation after guessing that it was Wuming who was summoned by other communities, it could be seen that this kind of thing wasn't common. It could be guessed that there shouldn't be any other communities that needed to invite people from another world to supplement their strength. In addition, Wuming said that the invitation of 16 Knights and the others was related to Black Rabbit, and Black Rabbit's mood was slightly low. It could be said that Wuming's guess was very close. Combining all the guesses, it was that Black Rabbit's community might be very weak, or it might be the weakest, so it urgently needed to supplement its strength, which was why it used such an extreme method. After all, if the invited people didn't want to join Black Rabbit's community, then Black Rabbit's invitation would be wasted. Wuming didn't think it was easy to invite people from another world. Perhaps it was easy for those powerful communities, but Wuming felt that it might be extremely difficult for Black Rabbit's community. Don't worry, I wasn't invited by other communities. I came for other reasons. Wuming's words calmed Black Rabbit, whose hair had changed color due to fear and worry. Chapter 571. Really? Black Rabbit breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed. Fortunately, Wuming was not invited by other communities, and Black Rabbit's worries were not unreasonable. After all, no matter where it was, as long as it was related to benefits, it would easily lead to disputes, battles, and even deaths. And with the level of mental power Wuming displayed before, even in this world, he was a talent that was highly sought after. Wuming could imagine that if Wuming was really summoned by other communities, then after that community knew that Black Rabbit did something similar to poaching, they would definitely go against Black Rabbit's community. After all, when coming to an unfamiliar place, people often tended to be close to the first friendly force they met. If Wuming joined Black Rabbit's community because of this, then the community that invited Wuming to this world would definitely not give up. And because Black Rabbit's community was in the wrong, coupled with the fact that they were weak, even if they did not die, they would lose a layer of skin. But all of this was based on the fact that Wuming was invited by other communities. Then, Wuming looked at Black Rabbit, who was patting her full chest with a relaxed expression. Then, combined with the community you mentioned, it's almost time to start talking about the problem of your community, Black Rabbit. Wuming's words made Black Rabbit, who had just relaxed her delicate body, tremble, and she was stunned on the spot. Black Rabbit knows. Black Rabbit said with a gloomy expression. If you want to participate in the gift competition in this world, you must join a force called the community. Could it be a force like the Mafia? This sentence was inexplicably appropriate when it came from the seemingly delinquent 16 Knights. No. It's not that kind of evil organization. Just like Black Rabbit's community, it's like a home. Black Rabbit looked at 16 Knights angrily. I'm just kidding, 16 Knights responded with a smile, but there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. At this moment, Black Rabbit, who was running around for home, no longer had the right to be teased. I think everyone here should roughly understand. Please continue, Black Rabbit. Gyo Asuka looked at Wuming, 16 Knights Reverse, and Hiroi Hiroyuki. Seeing that no one had any objections, he signaled Black Rabbit to continue. After all, what he was going to talk about next was probably the community of Black Rabbits. Introducing his own home was a very important thing. Then, the Black Rabbit lowered its head slightly, as if it was thinking about its language. Wuming guessed that Black Rabbit was considering how to convince them to join the Black Rabbit community. Then, Wuming spoke. Please raise your head, Black Rabbit. Wuming not only made the Black Rabbit raise its head, but it also attracted the attention of the 3 problem children. Let me say this first. I won't refuse to join someone just because their community is weak. Wuming's words stunned Black Rabbit. By the way, I'm the same. 16 Knights responded to Wuming's words with a wicked smile. Mr. 16 Knights. Black Rabbit looked at 16 Knights Reverse emotionally. I gave up a lot of money to come here. If the community I'm going to join is too good, I won't want to join. Gyo Asuka flicked her hair and said elegantly. Miss Asuka. Black Rabbit looked at Gyo Asuka even more emotionally. I just want to make friends. Then, Hiroi Hiroyuki looked at Wuming, 16 Knights Reverse, and Gyo Asuka. But since they all said so, then I'll join them. Miss Asuka. Although this reason made people feel helpless, Black Rabbit was still very grateful. Wuming looked at the 3 problem children in surprise. Through these words, Wuming could see that the 3 problem children had also guessed the purpose of Black Rabbit inviting people from another world. But Wuming was not surprised. Anyone who was slightly smarter, after seeing Wuming beat around the bush and Black Rabbit's various actions, could more or less guess Black Rabbit's purpose. Therefore, Wuming was not surprised that the 3 of them guessed Black Rabbit's purpose. But Wuming was quite concerned about what they said. But thinking about it carefully, it was not strange for problem children to say such things. Everyone. Thank you so much. Black Rabbit's eyes were filled with tears as he bowed 90 degrees to Wuming and the other 3. Then, the 3 problem children did not let down their title of problem children. Wuming even suspected that this was the 3 problem children's tactic of loosening the reins only to grasp them better. It's too early to thank me. I just won't directly refuse to join. I didn't say that I would join. Black Rabbit looked at 16 Knights Reverse blankly. I just don't want to join a community that's too good. If it's a community that's slightly worse, maybe I'll join. Black Rabbit turned his head mechanically and looked at Gyo Asuka. Even Miss Asuka, since the 2 of them are like this, then I'll be like them and tease Black Rabbit. Haruai Hiroyuki said the cruelest words without any expression. So, everyone is teasing Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit lowered his head. So it's like this. Wuming said lightly and shook his head helplessly. His conjecture was actually correct. Then, Black Rabbit took out a paper fan from nowhere and hit the problem children's heads hard. You adult problem children, ah. That's why, girl, you're still too young. How can you believe the words of problem children? Wuming smiled helplessly. Then, I say, I'm not teasing you. Black Rabbit, why did you hit my head? Wuming helplessly rubbed his head where Black Rabbit hit him. Because this topic was brought up by Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit can see that Mr. Villo is also an adult problem child. Black Rabbit puffed up his cheeks and said angrily. Good job. Times 2. Joe Asuka and Haruai Hiroyuki gave Wuming a good job gesture. This made Wuming feel his head hurt, although it didn't hurt. When Wuming thought about how he was classified as a problem child by Black Rabbit, he inexplicably felt a trace of sadness. All right, little brother, you should know that we're in this together. 16 Knights put his arm around Wuming's shoulder and said generously. Should I have left immediately after coming to this world? These 3 guys won't die from the fall anyway. Wuming was speechless. Wuming even started to suspect that these 3 guys didn't guess the situation of Black Rabbit's community through Wuming's beating around the bush and Black Rabbit's behavior, but purely to tease Black Rabbit. But of course, that was a joke. Then, Black Rabbit, can you tell us why you invited us? Joe Asuka finished speaking and straightened his body, looking quite serious. Not only Joe Asuka, but Haruai Hiroyuki and 16 Knights also became serious. So you guessed it already. Wuming chuckled lightly and also began to get serious. Speaking of which, Wuming felt that he had been very serious all along. You don't have to hide it, Black Rabbit. Compared to being tricked into a weak community, I think they're more willing to take the initiative to join a weak community. The 3 problem children nodded along with Wuming's words. Wuming's words became the last straw that broke the camel's back. Black Rabbit began to talk. Actually, Black Rabbit's community is now a community that doesn't even have a name or a flag, which is the so-called no name. Chapter 572. Black Rabbit told everyone about her community's situation in one breath. Originally, a few years ago, Black Rabbit's community's flag flew all over the East District, but because the existence of the Demon King forced them to participate in the gift competition, they lost their companions, name, and flag. Only Black Rabbit and Ren Russell were left to participate in the gift competition. The remaining 120 members were all children under the age of 10 who couldn't participate in the gift competition. And in this box court world where participating in the gift competition was the standard of survival, the current state of no name could be said to be facing a life and death crisis. No Name, who was at the bottom, was in urgent need of new companions to save them, so Black Rabbit used the items that she had painstakingly obtained to summon people from the other world. They were 16 Knights Reversal, Jiu Yuao, and Haruai Hikari. Although there was one more now, but because Wuming didn't belong to anyone, this was a good thing for No Name's current state. While she was at it, Black Rabbit also explained to Wuming and the others about the division of different districts and classes. The box court world was divided into 4 districts, East, South, West, and North. There were 2 super huge barriers called the boundary walls that separated them. And the mountain that Wuming saw in the sky before was the intersection of the 2 boundary walls. And at this moment, Wuming and the others and No Name were at the outermost position of the East District of this world. And there was also a saying about the outer gate. In this world, other than the 4 districts of East, South, West, and North, there were also 7 classes. Each class was represented by a corresponding number. The smaller the number, the stronger the strength. And these 7 classes were also divided. 1, 2, 3, and 4 digits were the upper class, 5 digits were the middle class, and 6 and 7 digits were the lower class. Just like where no name was currently at, it was 2105380 outer gate, the lower class of 7 digits. And according to Black Rabbit, her community, no name, was undoubtedly the weakest existence in this 7-digit outer gate. Question: are names and flags important? Jiu Yuao raised her hand and asked. After all, in the eyes of normal people, losing a companion was a serious matter, but weren't names and flags randomly made up? Very important. It's quite important. Black Rabbit said excitedly. In this world, the importance of the community's name and flag is probably equivalent to the importance of a country's name and flag in other worlds, Wooming analyzed. Mr. Villo is right. That is a very important existence. Black Rabbit's expression sank again. Question: what is a demon king? Haruhi Yayoi raised his small hand. Reverse 16 Knights was also quite interested in this term. It sounded like the existence of a big boss. That's an existence that uses the natural disasters of the box court world. No one wants to encounter it. Then, Black Rabbit explained the existence of the Demon King to everyone in detail. There was a special authority in the box court world called the Organizer Authority. The person who had the Organizer Authority could forcefully hold the game of bestowment. The participants could not choose whether they wanted to participate or not. They could directly ignore their wishes and force them to participate. And the existence that had the Organizer Authority was known as the Demon King. In the game of bestowment organized by the organizer, people could choose to participate in the game of bestowment or not. The Demon King, no matter what you choose, forced you to participate in the game of bestowment organized by the Demon King. Once the Demon King initiated the game of bestowment, no one could refuse. They had to participate. If they won, everyone would be happy. Moreover, they could choose to let the defeated Demon King join their community to strengthen their strength. But often, the truth was not that simple. Demon Kings were basically powerful existences. The top target of the Demon Kings was also a community that the Demon King judged could not defeat in the gift competition. After all, the Demon Kings could not challenge a community that was much stronger than them. That would be no different from sending themselves to their deaths. But this also meant that if a community was targeted by the Demon King, there was basically no chance of survival. That was how Black Rabbit's community, No Name, was dragged into the game of bestowment by the Demon King. Then, it was defeated overnight and its companion, name, and flag were taken away. Then, why not disband the current community and form a new one with a name and flag? Reverse 16 Knights asked. After all, according to Black Rabbit's introduction, the game of bestowment did not say that this could not be done. 16 Knights' meaning was very simple. Only by forming a new community with a name and flag could Black Rabbit's No Name survive. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Wooming retorted. Establishing a new community, other than having a name and flag, was exactly the same as no name in other aspects. No companions, no talents, and the people in this area knew that this new community was the former No Name. Therefore, it was basically impossible for them to join this new community formed after No Name was disbanded. And according to Wooming's guess, the tool to summon people from another world was not something that could be seen casually. Otherwise, Black Rabbit would not have only used it now. Instead, it used it after No Name was invaded by the Demon King. All in all, even if a new community is established, No Name is still No Name. It's just a No Name with a layer of skin over it. Its essence will not change. Mr. Villo is right. However, even without those factors, Black Rabbit would not do that. Black Rabbit raised its head and looked at Wooming and the others with a firm gaze. Black Rabbit wants to protect everyone's community. Protect this home that will still exist even if it is invaded by the Demon King and abandoned. Protect this home that everyone can see when they return. Black Rabbit said emotionally. Unknowingly, tears once again hung from the corners of its eyes. Black Rabbit does indeed want Mr. Villo, Mr. 16 Knights, Miss Flying Bird, and Miss Yao to join my community. However, because Black Rabbit knows that its community is a weak one, it was actually prepared to hide it from you at the beginning and wait until you join Black Rabbit's community. Black Rabbit said in a low voice. However, I didn't expect Mr. Villo's intelligence to be so high. You actually guessed the information of Black Rabbit's community through indirect reasoning. Mr. 16 Knights, Miss Flying Bird, and Miss Yao also saw some clues through Mr. Villo's method. The four of you are quite outstanding talents. Black Rabbit smiled at the four of them. Even if everyone does not choose to join Black Rabbit's community, Black Rabbit will not be angry and will not have any complaints. After all, Black Rabbit's community is the weakest existence among the 7 digits. Moreover, the invitation letter only brought people from another world. It does not have the ability to force them to join the community. Then, Black Rabbit lowered its head and did not speak again. At the same time, Wuming and the others did not make a sound. Just like that, the 5 of them fell into silence. Then, Black Rabbit will leave first. Black Rabbit, who lowered its head, stood up without lifting its head, turned around, and walked away. Thinking about it, after knowing that the community that was about to join was the weakest, no name, that did not even have a name and flag, who would want to join? Probably no normal person would choose to join such a community. A few teardrops fell from Black Rabbit's cheeks. As Black Rabbit walked, the teardrops fell to the ground. However, Wuming and the others who saw this scene smiled helplessly. The 4 of them looked at each other. Jiu Yufei and Hiroi Hiroyuki chose to give the right to speak to Wuming and 16 Knights, who were the boys with the loudest voices. Then, 16 Knights gave Wuming a look that said, "You were the first to discover Black Rabbit's purpose," and signaled to give the right to speak. Wuming smiled helplessly, then responded to 16 Knights and the others with a look that said, "Leave it to me." Then, Wuming spoke to the Black Rabbit who was walking away. "Please wait a moment, Black Rabbit, there is something I need to explain." After hearing Wuming's voice, Black Rabbit was stunned at first, then raised its hand to wipe its tears and turned around. "Excuse me, Villo-san, is there anything else you want to say?" Black Rabbit smiled happily at Wuming and the others. Although Wuming guessed that Black Rabbit might have experience as a host, Wuming had to admit that the smile at this moment was really ugly. People who showed this fake and forced smile to make themselves happy were not happy at all. "First, stop this smile, Black Rabbit," Wuming said bluntly or mercilessly to Black Rabbit. This made Black Rabbit's body tremble, and its smile also froze. "Listen carefully, Black Rabbit. Generally speaking, normal people can't join your community," Wuming said bluntly as if he was mocking Black Rabbit. Like dark clouds, Wuming's words covered Black Rabbit's blue sky, causing Black Rabbit's smile to disappear, and its eyes to become slightly moist. However, isn't such a community the most suitable for problem children? Wuming's words were like clouds parting, allowing Black Rabbit to see the blue sky again. In other words, Black Rabbit said with uncertainty, "I've decided to join your community, this time I'm not lying." Wuming smiled slightly. At this moment, Wuming's smile was like the sun after parting the clouds, illuminating Black Rabbit's heart. "Everyone. Thank you very much." This time, Black Rabbit showed a smile of indecent ceremony, but it was an unusually pure and beautiful smile that came from the bottom of its heart. As if to highlight this moment, the sun became brighter, reflecting this beautiful scene. Chapter 573. The Black Rabbit was quite happy at this moment, but someone had to come out to tease the Black Rabbit at this time. Wait a moment, Black Rabbit. The one who wants to join is just a little brother. A frivolous smile appeared on 16 Knight's face. Indeed, I didn't say that I wanted to join. Jiu Fei now looked at Black Rabbit with a teasing gaze. However, the person he hated the most was still Haruhibu Yaichi. I don't have any objections, but since that's the case, I'll just follow the two of them. Hearing the words of these three problem children, Black Rabbit was stunned on the spot, and its bright smile froze. Everyone must be joking. At this moment, Black Rabbit did not know what expression he should use to face these problematic children. Yeah, I was just kidding. Three very clearly, Black Rabbit was played again. You problematic children. Although the place where Wu Ming and the others were summoned was the 2105380 Outer Gate in name, there was only a large forest there. No Name was once the largest community in the East District, so it naturally had a large piece of land. Obviously, No Name wasn't here, because if they wanted to get to No Name, they would have to walk for a while. On the way to the outer gate of 2105380, Black Rabbit, who was leading the way, dropped its shoulders weakly. Seriously, the problem child is definitely a terrifying existence comparable to the Demon King. The Black Rabbit complained weakly. The Black Rabbit was almost traumatized by the problem child it summoned. After seeing the 2105380 outer gate in front of his eyes, as well as the current leader of No Name, Ren Russell, waiting in front of the gate, Black Rabbit's mood became a lot more cheerful. Young Master Ren, I've brought the newcomer back. Black Rabbit excitedly waved at Ren Russell, who was waiting in front of the city gate, and shouted loudly. After seeing Black Rabbit and hearing Black Rabbit's words, Ren's mood value obviously rose a lot. After that, Ren nodded and walked towards Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit, welcome back. After that, Ren asked the Black Rabbit as if he was confirming something. Are these two ladies the new members? Yes, these four are. Black Rabbit's voice stopped abruptly. Originally, Black Rabbit turned around and spread out his arms, preparing to introduce Wu Ming and the other three. As soon as Black Rabbit turned around, he realized that only Jiao Asuka and Haruhi Bia were left behind. Wu Ming and 16 Knights had already disappeared. Black Rabbit was so scared that her face turned pale, and her hair showed signs of changing color. Where did Mr. Villo and Mr. 16 Knights disappear? Black Rabbit asked Kumo Asuka and Kasuga Hibakushi excitedly. 16th Eventide said that he wanted to see World's End. So, he left on his own, Jiu Fei now kindly replied. What about Mr. Villo? The Black Rabbit asked again. As for Vero, because 16 Knights said, we still have a fight to fight, he was dragged away by 16 Knights, Haruhi Hiroyuki said to Black Rabbit Mamro in a serious tone. Just as Black Rabbit was about to ask again, Jiu Fei now spoke first, interrupting Black Rabbit. Right, Mr. Villo said something else. Then, Haruhi Hiroyuki mimicked Wu Ming's tone as if he was agreeing to Jiu Fei Niao's words. Tell Black Rabbit that 16th Eventide and I will be back soon. Don't worry, I'm here. You don't have to worry about 16th Eventide. Those were the Villo's last words. How can you not have to worry? In Black Rabbit's opinion, Wu Ming was also a problematic child, just slightly less dangerous than 16th Eventide. However, it still did not make her feel at ease. Then, Black Rabbit lowered her head with a gloomy face. Young Master Ren, please take care of Miss Asuka and Miss Hiroyuki. Black Rabbit will be back soon. After saying that, Black Rabbit's blue hair instantly turned pink. Then, Black Rabbit took a step back and kicked off the ground. Black Rabbit could directly jump out. Then, she quickly skipped away. Looks like Black Rabbit is angry. Haruai Hiroyuki looked at the pink hair floating behind Black Rabbit and nodded. But it has to be said, Black Rabbit really did look like a rabbit at this moment. The jumping ability of Hakata's rabbits is not bad. Jiu Fei now looked at Black Rabbit, who disappeared into the distance, and muttered. Then, please follow me. I'll show you around here. Ren said somewhat cautiously. Haruai Hiroyuki and Jiu Fei now looked at Ren, who was the leader of the community in name, as if thinking about something. It was as if they were judging him as a leader, which made Ren feel even more nervous. However, Jiu Fei Niao and Haruai Hiroyuki were not judging Ren, but surprised that Ren was also a child. Although Black Rabbit said that only she and Ren Russell, who was the leader of the community, had the ability to participate in the gift competition, Black Rabbit did not specify Ren Russell's age. Ren Russell was more than 10 years old, but he was probably only 11 or 12 years old. Letting a child in his teens become the leader of the community, no name, was really at the end of the road. That. Miss Hiroyuki, is there any other problem? Ren mustered up his courage and asked. Only then did Jiu Fei Niao and Haruai Hiroyuki recover. After all, staring at someone was very rude. Sorry for being rude. Then, Ren-kun, let's go. After Jiu Fei Niao said that, Haruai Hiroyuki nodded his head. Ren Russell, who was feeling extremely nervous, breathed a sigh of relief. Then, Ren led Jiu Fei Niao and Haruai Hiroyuki through the city gate. On the other side, Reverse 16 Knights and Wuming, one on the ground and one on the sky, were moving towards the east at an extremely fast speed. Behind Reverse 16 Knights was a cloud of dust that was stirred up by the running. The reason for that was because Reverse 16 Knights and Wuming had made a bet to see who could reach World's End first. Originally, Wuming was worried that 16 Knights would not be able to reach World's End before nightfall. However, don't worry about me, little brother. I am very strong. Be careful not to fall, Reverse 16 Knights said as he cast a provocative look at Wuming. After hearing those words from Reverse 16 Knights, Wuming realized that the person before him was not an ordinary person. However, Reverse 16 Knights had not displayed any special abilities in front of Wuming. He had only displayed his intellect. Thus, Wuming had subconsciously assumed that Reverse 16 Knights was a wise man type of character. Reverse 16 Knights' words did not sound like a bluff at all. Thus, Wuming began guessing Reverse 16 Knights' abilities. However, it was better to see it for himself. Since the other party was so confident, Wuming made up his mind. I will not go easy on you, delinquent 16th Knights. As a result, Wuming used his mental power to fly up and flew a short distance in an instant. Afterward, Wuming turned back with the idea of seeing Reverse 16 Knights' abilities. As a result, Wuming saw that Reverse 16 Knights had caught up with him like an ordinary person running. This caused Wuming to be greatly shocked. Then, the scene from before appeared. Wuming and Reverse 16 Knights, one in the sky and one on the ground, were moving toward the east at almost the same speed. Now, Wuming knew that Reverse 16 Knights had caught up with Wuming by running on the ground. There was no special ability. Could it be an ability like physical enhancement? Wuming guessed. However, Wuming felt that it was not that simple. Therefore, Wuming increased his flying speed by a lot. The air seemed to explode, producing an explosive sound. That was a sonic boom. By a conservative estimate, Wuming's current flying speed was at least 10 kilometers per second. Even so, Reverse 16 Knights was still able to easily catch up with Wuming. In fact, he had even surpassed Wuming to arrive before Wuming. What is it, little bro? Is that all you have? If you continue like this, you will lose, Reverse 16 Knights said without turning back. Additionally, he increased his flying speed. Wuming looked ahead. It was a miraculous natural scene. Countless trees had stopped growing before him. Instead, they were replaced by a large body of water. There was a cliff that was higher than Wuming and Reverse 16 Nights. A waterfall that was more spectacular than any other waterfall flowed down from the cliff. The waterfall flowed down from the cliff into a bottomless abyss. That was probably World's End. Indeed, if Wuming were to continue like this, he would lose this little bet. How can that be all you have? Wuming revealed a smile. Due to Reverse 16 Nights' provocation. In an instant, Wuming's flying speed increased by another notch. Wuming exerted a force through the air and the air behind Wuming was repelled, creating a temporary vacuum. Instantly, Wuming and Reverse 16 Nights figures smashed into the body of water. Boom! Chapter 574. Dong! Due to their collision, a large splash of water was sent flying up into the sky, creating a scene akin to rain that did not cease for a long time. Combined with the sun hanging high up in the sky, it created a rare scene of a sunshower. Wuming and Reverse 16 Nights stood up, their bodies drenched with water. They then looked around. Although they were in a body of water, the water here was very shallow, less than half a meter deep. Thus, the two of them were standing in the half-meter deep water. Is this World's End? It's really spectacular. 16 Nights said happily, not caring about her wet body. Wuming turned to look at Reverse 16 Nights, the smile on his face remaining pure. This time, however, the smile on Reverse 16 Nights' face was one of excitement and joy. It gave Wuming a feeling that he had come to the right world. Due to that, Wuming's vexed feelings of having to search for his main body in this incomparably large box court world eased. It is indeed spectacular. Although I have been to many worlds, this is my first time seeing something like this. Wuming stretched his hand out to feel the coolness brought about by the artificial rain. Wuming relaxed. The water here was exceptionally cool. Oh, little brother, you still have that kind of ability. 16 Nights looked at Wuming with a chuckle. I am not a human, after all. It is not surprising for me to have some special abilities. Wuming smiled. Oh, is that so? Looks like this bet ends in a tie between me and this non-human little brother. Next, Reverse 16 Nights revealed a particularly brutal smile. Now that you've seen World's End, let us begin our fight here. Next, Reverse 16 Nights charged at Wuming, creating a large splash of water and countless pebbles. Dong! It was an ordinary stomp. And yet, an explosive sound rang out. Then, the human known as the 16 Nights in reverse met the ghost known as Vero Cyrus Ed at the end of the world. At the same time, not far away from World's End, a pink-haired bunny girl, or rather, Miss Black Bunny, who was having a headache because of Mr. Problem Child, was skipping her way towards World's End. Seriously, where did those two problem children go? Black Rabbit complained helplessly. Although the outer gate of 2105380 was very close to World's End, do not forget, the surface area of this world was very big. Although the outer gate of 2105380 was the closest to World's End, it was still not a place that ordinary people could reach. To put it simply, there were 2 points. Firstly, it was too far away. As mentioned before, the box court world was very big. The 7-digit outer sect was also quite a distance away from the end of the world. Secondly, danger. Due to the area between the 7-digit number of outer disciples and World's End, no one would care even if a robbery or murder were to occur there. After all, Hakuda's laws were only effective for those in the upper 7 digits. Of course, if you robbed some big shot, they wouldn't mind teaching you a lesson and destroying your corpse. No, it would be more accurate to say that even if you were in the lower 7 digits, as long as no evidence of your crime could be found, nothing could be done about it. Not being found out was not the same as committing a crime. That was not a joke. Naturally, if you were to be caught committing a crime, your punishment would be much harsher compared to ordinary criminals. However, such a thing was unlikely to happen here. That was because there were many trial grounds for Asura gods and Buddhas here. That was another way of saying danger. The gift competition for the trial held by the Asura gods and Buddhas. That was a death game where a moment of carelessness could cost you your life. Black Rabbit was precisely that. If those Asura gods and Buddha's flowery words deceived us into participating in the gift competition, that would be terrible. Black Rabbit said worriedly as she moved forward. As everyone knew, many Asura gods and Buddhas, due to having lived for too long, liked to stir up trouble when they had nothing better to do. Thus, in the face of new faces who were unfamiliar with the rules, those Asura gods and Buddhas would tempt them. At present, Black Rabbit had almost reached the edge of World's End. I remember that water gods' trial grounds are in front of us. I hope they are not there, Black Rabbit said expectantly. Then, a giant wave and a series of roars that soared into the sky completely shattered Black Rabbit's hopes. No. It can't be, Black Rabbit was stunned for a moment. Then, she quickly reacted and dashed in the direction of the wave. In just a few seconds, Black Rabbit had passed through the forest. The waters of World's End appeared in front of Black Rabbit, including the figures of Wooming and Reverse 16 knights who were soaked in the rainwater formed by the waves, and in between the two of them, the figure of a huge unconscious whitewater snake. Hey! Hey hey hey! Faced with such a scene, Black Rabbit was stunned at first. Then, she let out a startled cry. Yo, isn't this Black Rabbit? Why did you change color? Reverse 16 knights asked without any self-awareness. Black Rabbit, you must have run around without permission. That's why your hair changed color, 16 knights. Wooming waved his hand with an "I am quite self-aware" expression. This clearly has something to do with Mr. Villo. How can Mr. Villo say something like that? Black Rabbit was so infuriated by the two of them that she bellowed. Ma, it's all 16 knights' fault. Wooming instantly pushed the blame onto Reverse 16 knights. Hey little brother, when I pulled you away, didn't you agree as well? We are rivals. We have to bear the responsibility together. Despite saying that, the smile on Reverse 16 Knight's face did not diminish. It did not match his words at all. By the way, what are you two doing here? Black Rabbit said, giving up on herself. Isn't it obvious? Come with me to World's End and have a look. While you're at it, let's have an exciting fight. 16 Knights Reversal smiled at Black Rabbit. Right. That's right. Black Rabbit suddenly reacted after hearing 16 Knights' words. This is World's End's water god, right? Did you two defeat the water god? Black Rabbit pointed at the unconscious white water snake and said in disbelief. Ah. Water god. Is it this snake? 16 Knights laughed in disbelief. Unexpectedly, this big white snake was actually a water god. How interesting. After 16 Knights and I arrived at World's End, we enjoyed the scenery. Then, 16 Knights began sparring with me, Wooming began explaining. Next, Reverse 16 Knights continued Wooming's words. Then, this fellow suddenly charged out while little brother and I were fighting. It said that we had disturbed its slumber and that it had to participate in its gift competition to undergo its trial. Next, Reverse 16 Knights revealed a pure and wicked smile. Then, this guy was defeated by me and my brother. Black Rabbit was pleasantly surprised by Reverse 16 Knights' answer. Although there were only two of them, their combined strength had allowed them to defeat the water god. This power allowed Black Rabbit to see the future of their no name. However, it was not that Black Rabbit did not believe it. It was also not that Black Rabbit discriminated against humans. Rather, could two mere humans really defeat the water god of World's End, who possessed a divine spark? Seeing the puzzled look on Black Rabbit's face, Wuming began explaining to Black Rabbit. Don't listen to 16 Nights nonsense, Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit patted its chest and breathed a sigh of relief. As expected, they had used some method to defeat the water god. This was in line with the theory of humans using their wits to defeat their enemies. It was this snake that broke into the space between 16 Nights and me. Before it could finish its sentence, it was accidentally knocked out by our fists. Sigh. Black Rabbit was dumbfounded. Next, a cry of shock reverberated through the sky once more. Sigh, sigh, sigh. Chapter 575. The artificial rain in the World's End did not last for long. After the rain stopped, a beautiful rainbow appeared in the World's End. However, Wuming, Reverse 16 Nights and Black Rabbit did not see this beautiful scene. On the way back to the outer gate of World 2105380, Black Rabbit held onto a seedling of an unknown plant with both hands and skipped ahead. It was clear that Black Rabbit was in a good mood. This time, Wuming and Reverse 16 Nights did not disappear. Instead, they obediently followed behind Black Rabbit. Why? After all, with Black Rabbit around, the fight between Wuming and Reverse 16 Nights ended without a conclusion. Not long after Wuming and Reverse 16 Nights began their fight, the giant snake that Black Rabbit addressed as the water god appeared to disturb them. Then, Black Rabbit arrived as well. After being disturbed time and time again, Reverse 16 Nights lost the will to fight with Wuming. In the end, Reverse 16 Nights and Wuming agreed to continue if there was an opportunity. Wuming had no choice but to agree. Heaven had taken pity on him. He did not want to fight with Reverse 16 Nights anymore. As an origin dragon that lived in the Great Origin, Wuming's physical strength was not weak. He did not have to worry about fighting with a human. That said, the human was not ordinary at all. Due to the fact that Wuming was only in his spiritual form, his physical strength was far from comparable to that of an origin dragon. Still, Wuming's physical strength was enough for most situations. However, in the face of Reverse 16 Nights' punch, Wuming utilized the Lune Rune and Yggdrasil's enhancement magic. Wuming, who had personally fought Reverse 16 Nights, could tell that Reverse 16 Nights was a monster in human skin. After admiring the scenery in the World's End, Reverse 16 Nights attacked Wuming. Instantly, Wuming exchanged a punch with Reverse 16 Nights. As a result, 16 Nights and Wuming both took a few steps back. It could be said that if Wuming hadn't reacted in time before the force of Wuming's Reverse 16 Nights fist reached his body, Wuming might have been sent flying. Wuming immediately judged that the pure physical strength of his spiritual body was no match for the 16 Nights reversal. Not bad, little brother. Although I went easy on you, you're the first person to take my fist and not die. This was what 16th Night had said back then with great excitement. Wuming felt a little helpless. She sounded as if 16th Night often beat people to death. Wuming could tell from 16 Nights' aura and moves that 16 Nights had not killed anyone. However, this might have something to do with the fact that he was in an ordinary world. Even so, Wuming would not show mercy. On the contrary, Wuming had to use more strength. Otherwise, he would really be beaten to death by the opponent's strange strength. In the end, because of a series of accidents, the fight between the two was forced to end. However, Wuming always felt that this young man was not that simple. In addition to his extraordinary physical strength, he must have other abilities. Following behind Black Rabbit, Wuming, who was walking side by side with 16 Nights reversal, quietly glanced at 16 Nights reversal and kept thinking. Then, 16 Nights reversal noticed Wuming's gaze and smiled at Wuming, full of fighting spirit. However, it's not like I don't have any hidden strength. Wu Ming returned the same smile as 16 Nights Reversal. Fortunately, Black Rabbit's mind was immersed in the sapling in her hand and did not notice the smile of Wu Ming and 16 Nights Reversal. Otherwise, she would have lectured them again. He with this water tree sapling, we don't have to go to other communities to buy water anymore. We finally have our own water source, Black Rabbit said happily. However, Wu Ming frowned when he heard this. No Name had fallen so low that they had to buy their daily water from other communities. Then Wu Ming pondered, what kind of existence was the Demon King that attacked No Name to be able to turn the largest community in the East District into this in one night? After 16 Nights saw Wu Ming's pondering eyes, he instantly understood what Wu Ming was thinking. Then, as if he thought of something, 16 Nights Reversal smiled. Little brother, are you interested in taking back the name and flag of No Name from the Demon King's hands? Wu Ming looked at 16 Nights Reversal and smiled. Of course I'm interested, taking back the flag and name from the Demon King's hands is a must. Wu Ming said solemnly. Since Wu Ming decided to join No Name, then he would work hard for No Name and not temporarily join an organization to find his original body in this world. However, Wu Ming and 16 Nights Reversal's words made Black Rabbit tremble and shiver. You two problem children. Don't cause any more trouble. Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming and 16 Nights Reversal helplessly and tried to persuade them. Ma, let's talk about this later when we have the chance. Wu Ming smiled at 16 Nights Reversal. 16 Nights Reversal spread out his hands and shrugged his shoulders. Wu Ming was right. After all, even if they talked about it now, they would not be able to find the Demon King that attacked No Name a few years ago. But then again, Mr. Villo and Mr. 16 Nights do not look like humans at all. Black Rabbit complained and looked at Wu Ming and 16 Nights Reversal as though they were monsters. Have you ever seen a human who could defeat a water god that had obtained a quintessence and knock the water god unconscious with one punch? At any rate, Black Rabbit had never seen one in his 200+ years of life. In response to Black Rabbit's words, Wu Ming also looked at 16 Nights Reversal as though he was looking at a monster. It was not surprising that Wu Ming could defeat the snake. After all, the spirit body of an origin dragon was quite powerful. However, for a pure human like 16 Nights Reversal to be able to defeat a water god that had obtained a quintessence was quite shocking. Back in World's End, Black Rabbit had told Wu Ming and 16 Nights Reversal about the use of a quintessence. The quintessence of the quintessence world was not the mythical position that Wu Ming and 16 Nights Reversal believed that gods occupied. It was also not a natural god. Instead, it was a powerful gift that could allow an individual to evolve to the highest level of that species. Simply put, if a quintessence was given to an ordinary snake, the snake would become a gigantic snake god. If a quintessence was given to an ordinary human, the human would become an immortal. If a quintessence was given to a ghost, the ghost would become a ghost god. Additionally, the quintessence also had the ability to strengthen other gifts. In short, it was a very powerful ability. However, the quintessence was not something that could be given to just anyone. Only those Asura gods and Buddhas or those with special abilities could give others the quintessence. Additionally, it did not mean that those who were given a quintessence would become invincible. Take the knocked-out snake for example. As Wu Ming had not come into contact with the people of this world, he was unable to determine how strong the other party was. However, according to the definition of the upper, middle, and lower levels of the quintessence world, Wu Ming speculated that the snake god could not exceed the middle level, which was a 5-digit number. If such a being could be in existence of the upper level, then the martial strength of this world was too low. It was impossible no matter how he thought about it. Wu Ming pondered and shook his head. 16 Nights Reversal did not notice Wu Ming's absent-mindedness. He had the expression of a human as he looked at Black Rabbit with a smile. Hey, Black Rabbit, I'm different from this ghost. I'm a pure human. Mr. 60 Nights is really a human. Black Rabbit was a little surprised. After all, an existence with such power was actually a human. He should be surprised no matter what. Then, Black Rabbit noticed something wrong. Wait a minute, Mr. Villo is actually a ghost. Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming in shock. Wu Ming nodded. 16 Nights is right. You can also understand that I'm a ghost. As he spoke, Wu Ming turned his body into a spirit body. Then, he reappeared and displayed the ghost's illusory form through spirit body. He's really a ghost. Black Rabbit said in a daze. As a rabbit who had lived for more than 200 years, Black Rabbit still had some knowledge about ghosts. There was a large community related to ghosts in the North District. Ghosts were the same as spirit bodies. They were illusory spirit bodies that were separated from the physical body. Although Wu Ming's spirit body was essentially the same as the heroic spirits in the Valhalla, little brother, can you still disappear? That's interesting. You really are a ghost. 16 Nights Reversal looked at Wu Ming with interest. This once again triggered 16 Nights Reversal's problematic child nature. Then, the Black Rabbit angrily roared at Reverse 16 Nights. Mr. Problematic Child, please stop causing trouble. Yes, I understand. 16 Nights Reversal smiled and nodded as if he had succeeded in teasing Black Rabbit. Is this the outer gate of 2105380? Wu Ming, who was not looking ahead, suddenly spoke. Then, Black Rabbit and 16 Nights Reversal also looked ahead. It was indeed the place where Black Rabbit and Ren Russell met before. Phew, we're finally here. Black Rabbit breathed a sigh of relief. She was already troubled by the two problematic children behind her. Now, she was finally free. However, Black Rabbit forgot that two problematic children had already entered the city, and they were led by the immature leader, Ren. Chapter 576. We are going to have a gift match with Forsgaro. The kind where both sides are betting everything. And they are the ones who started it. Wah, 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 wah. What is going on? Black Rabbit brought Wu Ming and 16 Nights into the city gate and found Ren, Jiumotu, and Kasuga Hibakushi sitting in an outdoor cafe. Then, the three of them told him that they were going to have a gift match with Forsgaro. Black Rabbit looked like he was about to collapse when he heard the news. 16 Nights, on the other hand, had an interesting expression. Wu Ming, on the other hand, was deep in thought. Then, as the leader, Ren told him what happened. Originally, Ren brought Jiumotu and Kasuga Hibakushi to the cafe and waited for Black Rabbit to look for Wu Ming and 16 Nights. Although life in No Name was tight, the cafe here was very friendly, and no matter how tight life in the community was, it could not be said. In the end, when the three of them sat down and ordered, a tall man named Guard Gasper, the leader of the Forsgaro community, suddenly sat down at Jiumotu and the other two seats. He wanted me, Kasuga Hibakushi, and Black Rabbit to join his community, and he even mocked the situation with No Name. He was just like a clown. Jiumotu held her forehead with one hand and had an "I'm about to be laughed at" look. Then, something must have happened, and that's why you guys decided to have a gift match with Forsgaro. Wu Ming asked with his arms crossed. Although Jiumotu and Kasuga Hibakushi were problematic children, they were not people who did not know the gravity of the situation. Because he was very angry, he did not consider the consequences of finding trouble, and he did not consider the consequences at all. Jiumotu and Kasuga Hibakushi calmly said something that made people speechless. Alright, problematic children are still problematic children, you two big idiots. Such an answer made Black Rabbit pull out a folding fan from out of nowhere and hit the two men's heads. Although there were indeed 2 problematic children, the more important reason was the orc named Guard Gasper. Thanks to Miss Flying Bird's grace, we've learned some things from Guard, Ren continued, but his expression did not look too good. Due to the other parties bragging, my community is the community that has continuously won the gift competition with the other communities by betting on their flags. Zhou Yuanfei's words made Zhou Yuanfei suspicious. After all, Wu Ming had also explained Black Rabbit's words in layman's terms. The world community's flag was as important as the national flag. Logically speaking, it was unlikely that there would be consecutive flag betting competitions. Then, Distant Bird used his grace to control the other party, forcing him to reveal the truth. My ability has the effect of completely dominating the opponent, Zhou Yufei said. It was through this effect that everyone learned about Guard's methods. By secretly capturing the old, weak, women, and children of the other community, and then threatening the other community to enter the gift competition with the flag bet. Then, by threatening the other community, he won and took the other community into the Forsgaro. Oh, so to say, Guard can be said to be the largest community in this 2105380 outer sect area. After 16 knights finished speaking, he looked at Wu Ming. Wu Ming naturally understood what 16 knights meant, so he followed 16 knights' explanation. Then, Guard must have used some method to control the other communities, so that such a large community can be maintained without chaos. Then, Wu Ming showed a disdainful expression. According to what Guard did, he probably captured some children who were the future of the other communities and used them as hostages to control the other communities. It couldn't be said that Wu Ming knew a lot, because if Wu Ming was on Guard's side, he would do the same thing. However, Wu Ming would never become someone like Guard. Even if Wu Ming became the villain, Guard's methods would still make Wu Ming despise Wu Ming. Unfortunately, you only guessed half of it right. Distant Bird shook his head. Through Distant Bird's grace of domination, Guard said what he did, and it was indeed the same as what Wu Ming said, but those children have been killed by Guard, and even their bodies. Haruai Toshi was halfway through his sentence, and he couldn't continue. Black Rabbit covered her mouth in disbelief, and 16 knights frowned slightly. Naturally, Jutaka Renwa and Haruai Hiroyuki already knew about it. Black Rabbit, Wu Ming and 16 Knights Reversal were no fools either. They naturally knew what would happen to a corpse in the hands of a beast man like Guard. Phew, Wu Ming closed his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. It wasn't that Wu Ming didn't have any lives on his hands, nor was he a saint, nor was he unable to accept the deaths of those children. But Wu Ming was really angry with Guard's inhumane approach. The most important reason why Wu Ming liked humans was that humans had a kind nature. Sure enough, even if they transformed into human form, a beast was still a beast. To be honest, I have the urge to destroy Forsgaro. Although Wu Ming didn't burst out any amazing momentum, the murderous intent in his eyes was real. However, no one reacted to Wu Ming's murderous intent because Guard's approach was too heartless. But fortunately, we have Mr. 16 Knights and Mr. Villo on our side. It should be more than enough to deal with Guard. Black Rabbit patted her chest and sighed in relief. Ha! What are you talking about? They are the ones who are looking for trouble, it has nothing to do with me. 16 Knights spread her hands, indicating that she wouldn't participate. Black Rabbit was confused again. Ah, you're quite sensible. What about you, Villo? Joe Yuasuka didn't care about Black Rabbit's reaction and looked at Wu Ming. Wu Ming thought for a moment, then shook his head. If that's the case, you guys should participate in this gift competition. Wu Ming had his own reasons for doing so. Although Wu Ming knew that Guard must be very weak to him, being played around by the 2 girls, he decided not to make a move for the time being since it was his first time here. Instead, he decided to observe the situation for the time being. He also planned to look up some information to understand this world better. Moreover, this was also in line with Jo Yuasuke and Haruhi Hiroyuki's wishes, so why not? Then it's settled. Haruhi Hiroyuki made the final decision. Young Master Ren, why didn't you stop the two of them? Black Rabbit said helplessly. I'm sorry, Black Rabbit, because I couldn't stand it anymore, so... Ren gave Black Rabbit an apologetic smile. That was true, anyone who encountered such a situation would be filled with righteous indignation. However, without Wuming and 16 Knights' participation, Black Rabbit was quite worried. You don't have to worry, Black Rabbit, Haruhi Hiroyuki instantly subdued guard when he went berserk. Is Hiroyuki that strong? Black Rabbit looked at Haruhi Hiroyuki in surprise. Not only Black Rabbit, but Wuming and 16 Knights also looked at Haruhi Hiroyuki. Seems like you have some skills, Haruhi Hiroyuki. 16 Knights showed an interested smile. Wuming also didn't expect that Haruhi Hiroyuki, who looked so weak, would be able to subdue the berserk beastman. Together with Miss Jo Yuasuke's ability to dominate, I believe that with Miss Jo Yuasuke and Haruhi Hiroyuki, our no-name will definitely win this gift competition. Ren said some encouraging words in one go. Oh! Black Rabbit shouted excitedly. Although it was awkward for her to be the only one shouting. This leader is not bad, but she still needs some polishing. Wuming thought. Well, since everyone is here, let's go to the no-names territory to take a look. Wuming and the other three nodded, and began to follow Ren and Black Rabbit to the no-name territory. Chapter 577. This is no-name's base. Jo Yuao said in surprise. Let alone a base, from Jo Yuao's point of view, this was clearly a ruin from who knows where. But she couldn't be blamed, anyone who saw such a scene would be surprised. What appeared in front of Wuming's group was a huge ruined courtyard that looked like a castle and a vast wasteland. There was even a huge hole in the middle of the wasteland. 16 Knights walked to the side of a broken wall and used his hand to lightly grab it. The wall immediately shattered like sand. Haruhi Hikari walked to the empty space and grabbed a handful of soil. He found that it was all soil and sand that had lost its nutrients. Black Rabbit, I remember you said that the Demon King's attack happened a few years ago, right? 16 Knights was rarely serious. To be precise, it was 3 years ago. Black Rabbit lowered his head. Jo Yuao walked to Haruhi Hikari's side and looked at no-name's land that looked like it had been abandoned for hundreds or thousands of years. She frowned. But looking at the broken walls here, it's impossible to reach such a state in just 3 years. It wasn't that Jo Yuao was merciless, but this scene was too shocking. I'm sorry, this was indeed a fertile land 3 years ago. But because of the Demon King's attack 3 years ago, this land is still like this. Ren lowered his head secretly. It could be said that if Black Rabbit and Ren weren't members of No Name, they wouldn't believe that such a vast land could become like this in just 3 years. No, it should be said that it was in one night. But this land really did become like this on that night 3 years ago. And besides that, No Name's flag, name, and companions were all taken away. The Demon King left the land that has become like this to the remaining 120 members of No Name. But because these lands are barren, there are no other communities that want to take advantage of them. For everyone, it's already good to have a place to stay. Black Rabbit forced a smile, trying to make himself look less sad. Judo Asuka and Haruhi Hiroyuki looked at each other, nodded, and walked towards the Black Rabbit. What do Miss Fei Niao and Miss Yao want to do? Black Rabbit looked at the two people who were walking towards him and asked. Punish the Black Rabbit. The Black Rabbit was stunned. Then, the Black Rabbit's ears were grabbed by the two people's hands, and it was the kind that was very forceful. Wait a minute. Why did he have to punish the black rabbit? And why is the punishment of pulling my ears? The black rabbit's eyes were filled with tears as it covered its ears with a pitiful expression. There's no need to do that in front of your companions, Black Rabbit. Zhou Yuanfei pulled on Black Rabbit's ear and said with interest. We're all companions. There's no need to force yourself like this. Haruai Hikari was the same. However, compared to Q Hikari, Haruai Hikari was happier. I know. So please spare Black Rabbit's ears. Ren stood at the side and revealed a helpless expression as he looked at Zhou Yuanfei and Haruai Hikari pulling on Black Rabbit's ears. So this is the power of the Devil King. Leaving behind a symbol of his destruction to show his strength. What a proper villain. 16 knights looked at the ruins and said excitedly without caring about Zhou Yuanfei and Haruai Hikari playing with Black Rabbit's ears. Then, 16 knights realized that Wu Ming was nowhere to be seen. After looking around carefully, he realized that Wu Ming was doing something in the huge hole in the wasteland. Hey! Brother! Did you find something? 16 knights shouted at Wu Ming and walked towards Wu Ming. Thanks to this, Zhou Yuanfei and the rest were attracted over. Everyone looked at Wu Ming who was standing at the edge of the hole. Did you really find something? Zhou Yuanfei and Haruai Hikari let go of Black Rabbit's ears and walked towards Wu Ming. Only then did Black Rabbit was released. Let's go take a look too, Black Rabbit. Ren said to Black Rabbit who was rubbing her ears. Although he said it with an apologetic and helpless expression. Although Black Rabbit was angry that her ears were being played with by the two problem children, she was also curious about Wu Ming's current situation. So, she nodded. The three problem children gathered around Wu Ming and looked at the hole that wasn't very big. They couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. This hole was created because the Devil King who attacked 3 years ago took away something underground. Black Rabbit began to explain. According to the older generation members of the community, this area has been a land of miraculous power since a long time ago. Many people speculated that there was some kind of powerful blessing buried underground. Every one of them wanted to dig this place up in search of the treasure. However, due to the interference of the various forces, none of them succeeded. It was only when our community heard about this that we moved our headquarters here, Ren explained. Then, you don't plan to dig up the gift in the ground? Zhou Yuanfei asked. After all, this was a land that many communities were fighting over. Shouldn't they dig it up to see what was inside? In fact, our community's previous leader led the core members to dig up this land. However, for some reason, it was left unsettled. Needless to say, the former members of No Name must have encountered some unexpected situation during the digging process. Moreover, it was an unprecedented situation, so they had no choice but to stop digging. Black Rabbit said with a regretful expression. Black Rabbit is also very curious about what is inside. Unfortunately, Black Rabbit isn't strong enough to see that scene. Then, Black Rabbit's expression became serious. Since then, everyone in the community was told not to have any ideas about the treasure under this land. Everyone was obedient, so they didn't bother about what was under the land. And 3 years ago, when the Devil King attacked our community, he took away the mysterious gift under this land. After taking it away, this huge hole was left behind. Hearing Black Rabbit's explanation, 16 knights looked at Wu Ming with interest. But it seems like little brother has a lot to do with the mysterious gift under this land. 16 knights looked at Wu Ming who was starting to get irritated and said jokingly. Although Wu Ming didn't say anything, everyone present could see that Wu Ming was in a very bad mood at the moment. It could be said that Wu Ming was angry. Although Wu Ming didn't say anything, his heart was indeed about to explode. The mysterious gift that was once buried in this huge hole was the body of his dragon of origin. Chapter 578. At this moment, Wuming's heart was abnormally complicated, and he felt quite helpless. Originally, after understanding that this world covered an incomparably large area, Wuming would not be able to easily find his original body. Although he could find it as long as he got close, Wuming felt that he would have to put in some effort. As a result, when he got close to the base of No Name, Wuming sensed the presence of his original body. Once he entered, Wuming did not say anything and went straight to the place where he sensed his original body, and then he saw a huge pit. Wuming was stunned at first, then he began to feel irritated. Originally, he thought that he would have to put in some effort, but in the end, he sensed the presence of his original body. This made Wuming happy for a moment, and then he realized that he had indeed found traces of his original body's presence, traces that had once existed in this place. And after Wuming finished listening to Black Rabbit's explanation, Wuming was a little angry. The former members of No Name excavating Wuming's body was not a big deal. After all, people were curious about the unknown, and the former members of No Name finally stopped excavating. They must have discovered that Wuming's original body was under the ground. Although he did not know why they stopped, Wuming was quite satisfied that they knew when to advance and when to retreat. And those demon kings who took Wuming's body were really looking for trouble. As the largest community in the East, No Name's strength 3 years ago was definitely not weak, but they still stopped excavating Wuming's original body. Wuming himself also knew that his original body was incomparably precious in a sense, and the former members of No Name being able to resist the temptation was naturally not bad. As for that demon king, since he was able to destroy No Name in one night, then his strength must be even stronger than No Name 3 years ago. And for a demon king who was stronger than No Name 3 years ago, and who wantonly used his authority as the host to attack other communities, there was nothing that he could not, or rather, did not dare to do. He just did not know if the opponent's courage was as strong as his strength, if Wuming found the opportunity. Wuming took a deep breath, trying to relax himself. Then, Wuming looked at everyone apologetically. Sorry, everyone, I lost my composure. It's okay, Mr. Villo must have discovered something important to him, that's why he lost his composure. Black Rabbit smiled slightly, and everyone nodded. Mr. Villo is our companion now. If possible, I hope that Villo can pour out all the bitterness in his heart. Black Rabbit could be said to apply what she learned. I am also curious as to what little brother discovered to be so angry, 16 Knights said with a chuckle. Judo Asuka and Hiroi Hiroyuki nodded as well. Silent State was quite worrying. Wuming looked at everyone and fell into deep thought. That, if it's something that's inconvenient to say, you don't have to say it. Ren saw Wuming's hesitation and quickly tried to smooth things over. Wuming looked at Ren, smiled, and shook his head. There's nothing inconvenient, don't worry, Rin-kun. Wuming was actually thinking about what to say. Then, Wuming looked at everyone and spoke. 16 Knights and Black Rabbit already know, but I don't think the others know that I'm currently in a state similar to a ghost. Ghost? Jiuyu, Wuming, and Ren muttered. State. Black Rabbit and 16 Knights paid attention to the other part of Wuming's words. Let's put it this way, although I'm a ghost, I'm not dead, and this ghost state is the result of my own choice. Then, Wuming told everyone the half-truth and half-lie that he had conceived. In other words, you met a very powerful enemy, and when both sides were injured, you moved your spirit out of your body, and by chance, you found out that your real body was in this world, so you came to look for it. 16 Knights concluded Wuming's words. It feels a little magical. Wuming said calmly, but his eyes were filled with interest when he looked at Wuming, proving that Wuming's heart was not as calm as it seemed. Although it does feel magical, I didn't expect Villo to be a ghost. Let me touch it. Jiuyu's face was red, and her hands and feet began to move. Her gaze towards Wuming became dangerous, from Wuming's perspective. Although it's theoretically possible to separate one's spirit and body, this is the first time I've seen it. Ren looked at Wu Ming with interest. Although Ren was the current leader of No Name, he was still a child in his teens. He was far from the wisdom of an adult, so it was natural for him to be interested in strange things. But then again, Mr. Villo can travel between worlds on his own. That's a very powerful ability. Anyway, Black Rabbit could not travel between worlds, and among the people she knew, only the Shura gods and Buddhas had such an ability. Although Wu Ming's ability to travel between worlds was much higher than what Black Rabbit had imagined. In short, little brother, your real body was taken away by the Demon King, right? Then, are you interested in fighting the Demon King together? 16 Knights suddenly said. Wait. Wait a minute. Against the Demon King or whatever, we can't do it alone. Ren was shocked. That's right. Currently, there are only 6 people in our community who can participate in the gift competition. Moreover, Black Rabbit is a noble from the Box Court, so she can't freely participate in the gift competition. Although young Master Ren can participate in the gift competition, his strength is also very weak. Therefore, our current combat power is only the 4 of you who have just joined the Villo. Therefore, it's better to honestly develop the community bit by bit. Although the sentence "young Master Ren is very weak" made Ren's heart ache, it was the truth. Oh. So what, does having fewer people mean that we're weak? 16 Knights asked with a smile. 16 Knights' words made Black Rabbit and Ren look at each other. Indeed, the number of people doesn't mean the strength of the community. 3 years ago, there weren't many members of No Name, but they still became a community whose flag flew everywhere in the East District. Then there's no problem. Moreover, if we want to develop the community, there's nothing we can do without a name. Since that's the case, then why don't we just aim to become the Demon King? 16 Knights put his hands in his pockets, showing the look of a delinquent. Indeed, if we aim to defeat the Demon King that everyone is afraid of, it's hard not to be famous. Jo Yuasuke agreed with 16 Knights' words. Agreed. The quiet girl Haruai Hiroyuki silently raised her small hand and agreed with the two. But Black Rabbit clearly wanted to say something, but 16 Knights of Reverse interrupted Black Rabbit. Then, little brother, you will definitely agree. After all, your real body was taken away by the Demon King. 16 Knights looked at Wu Ming, who hadn't spoken yet. Of course, even if you don't defeat the Demon King, I will go back by myself. Wu Ming said with incomparable determination. One must know that his purpose of coming to this world was to find his real body. His real body was currently taken away by the Demon King who attacked No Name, so there was only one thing left to do, and that was to beat up the Demon King and then take back his real body. What do you think, young Master Tiny Tot? After Wu Ming agreed, 16 Knights turned around and looked at Ren. Young Master Ren. Black Rabbit looked at Ren worriedly. After all, Ren had the title of the community leader. Although it existed in name, the community still needed Ren's approval to do anything. At this moment, the young man named Ren Russell lowered his head and hesitated. Ren didn't really understand the abilities of these new members. He only saw a trace of it from Jo Yuasuke and Haruai Hiroyuki. Both of them had a very powerful gift to some extent. As for Wu Ming and 16 Knights, although Ren didn't know much about them, when Black Rabbit gave Ren the gift card containing the water tree sapling, Ren already knew that 16 Knights and Wu Ming were not weak existences. To be able to go to the end of the world alone and defeat the water god, it was enough to give him the courage to challenge the Demon King. I'm sorry, Black Rabbit. Ren apologized to Black Rabbit. Young Master Ren, you want to. Black Rabbit looked at Ren in surprise. In this way, how could everyone not know Ren's choice? That's right, I have decided to listen to Lord Reversal's suggestion and set the community's purpose to defeat the Demon King. Ren looked at everyone with an incomparably determined gaze. Well done, young Master Tiny Tot. 16 Knights laughed wildly. Quite decisive, you have the makings of a good leader. Jo Yuasuka gracefully flicked her hair. As expected, I can find friends here. Although Hiroi Hiroyuki's words were somewhat inexplicable, it was still able to liven up the atmosphere. Young Master Ren, I support you. Black Rabbit clenched his fist. Even if it's for my main body, I have to work hard. Wu-Ming said jokingly. After all, if it wasn't for his main body, would Wu-Ming not work hard? That was obviously impossible. Then, Ren gave an inspiring speech. Then, everyone, in order to take back our flag and name, work hard towards the goal of defeating the Demon King. Oh, oh, oh. Black Rabbit roared angrily. This made everyone feel awkward. Taking a closer look, it was 16 Knights who covered Ren's mouth. Wu-Ming and the other 3 also subconsciously kept quiet. Clearly, the Black Rabbit was being teased again. You problematic children the quick-witted Wu-Ming had already spiritualized and watched the remaining 3 problematic children being reprimanded by Black Rabbit. What a nice big family. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.